phrase this. You wanted to come on the stream, talk about European commanders, but you're also looking to improve your personal analysis. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, give us a quick rundown of, does Team Gigantti have like a signature composition they like to run, and does British Hurricane have a quick or a signature that they like to run themselves? Also, Sectum Sempra says if Jayne sees this, then he passes the chat interaction portion of today's stream. Fuck you. Saw it.
To answer your question about those two teams, it's rough, right? Because Hurricane came in as this hyper flexible team. They can play anything. They'll beat teams out just by being so flexible. And then we see them play generally pretty static comps across the weeks. And I think against Gigantti, they played quad tank for most of the series, which was quite bizarre. You will see some variations of that. So I promise you it's not a quad tank fiesta all the way through. Generally for Gigantti, they play around Davin on the Tracer. That's always the big kind of go-to with this team, is they know that Davin is the best on that. We've seen him pick up things like Sombra, but he doesn't stick on them for very long, for example. So all the teams will have that in mind. That means Nil is their other go-to DPS. He's played
Nil or Mill?
Nil, his name is Nil. And he's played a few different bits and bobs throughout the week. Soldier, Junkrat. I don't think they really have a Pharah player now, I think about it, which is an interesting one. And they know they rely very heavily on Masar and Ripper, their two support players. These guys were coined in week one as the best synergistic supports in the whole of Contenders. And it shows across the weeks because quite consistently they are beating away Tracers who come to try and assassinate them. They're not like some of the teams where they just leave their Zenyatta out to dry and they get picked off very, very quickly. It's a little bit harder than that. So no definitive style for either team, except you're pretty much guaranteed to always see Davin playing Tracer.
Fair enough. Okay, so how this is going to work, just so chat knows, is that at the very start, I'm going to kind of do my analysis. And right now, Dezachu does have the ability to see my screen in real time, so he's not suffering from stream delay or anything like that. So at the start, I'm gonna do most of the analysis and ask questions and see if Dezachu has anything to add. But as we move along towards the end of this matchup, at the very end, Dezachu is going to be doing most of the analysis, and I'm just going to be the peanut gallery. So let's get right to it. You ready? You ready to do this?
Yep.
Awesome.
I'm ready. Let's go.
So this is Tech Girl, right?
So,
yeah, Tech Girl.
Enough
Sam.
from us. Jaws, leg day. Let's go over to Nepal.
Perfect. Nepal.
Thanks, guys. On the desk once
boys.
again, British Hurricane versus...
God, aren't those just two handsome gentlemen right there?
Gigantti.
They always get that. Whenever me and Trick come on cast, everyone's always like, "Oh, where are the handsome casters gone?"
The Hurricane looking pretty strong themselves.
Okay,
Craggy.
let's skip right into the match.
I'm going to put that one down, let the hammer swing, and let the hammer do the talking. That's more often than not the game plan from Team Gigantti.
Okay, I'll pause.
However,
Oh, they're just
like
assemble heroes phase.
They like to get on the back line. They like
So Nepal Sanctum, of course, a map that we've seen some more Orisa heavy compositions, especially with her bugged pull around the edges of the map there. But in Overwatch League, we've been seeing a lot more kind of spam heavy comps with the the Pharah and the Junkrat's kind of always been a mainstay. Junkrat on Sanctum. Sorry, Sanctum was the first real map that actually saw Junkrat played seriously in pro play, and I don't remember which exact team pulled that off here. But it was Sanctum that has become basically known to be Junkrat's map here. Now, as I say, a map that is, known for its Orisa, neither team is running the Orisa here. So Team Gigantti is going to be running Masa on the Lucio and Reaper on the Zenyatta. So they're running double off tank, which is going to give them double defensive support ultimate. And anytime you're running the Zenyatta, which is going to be like 90% of the time, because this is the higher levels of play, we're going to be looking at some sort of dive. We've got the classic dive tanks of the Winston and Diva. Davin, unsurprised. Davin? Is it Davin?
Yeah, Davin.
Davin on the Tracer, as you so brilliantly predicted. And I'm going to sneeze.
Sneeze. There it is. Bless you.
Excuse me. and then nil on the soldier. So anytime you have a soldier here instead of a more mobile hero such as a Genji or something, means you're going to have a much more stable backline. So this means that Masa and Reaper are basically going to be holding around nil, because nil holding around the edges by pillars or just by kind of the edge around the pit here is going to have really nice damage application onto the point itself as well as onto the individuals on the other side. And with Reaper and nil playing together, anything that nil can shoot, Reaper can discard, which makes it really nice here. And this gives Team Gigantti basically two different options here. They can play a two-man dive with Davin.
You want to call him Davin? Call him Davin.
I'm going to call him Davin. Words are hard, but I'm going to try.
We'll get through it together.
So we're either going to see the two-man dive coming out from Davin and LH Cloudy, or the three-man dive with RCK supporting. Now, because Soldier has his puddle, it's not like a McCree who's somebody who needs a lot of protection, and especially where you're seeing heavier comps run on Sanctum, such as the Orisa or the Roadhog, I would probably expect RCK to be operating with LH Cloudy. So I'm going to be calling this a 3-3 dive from Team Gigantti. Thoughts on that? Do you think that's correct, that they're going to be running 3-3 dive?
Yeah, very much so. And they do this quite a lot throughout the series with Nil playing off onto the side with the two supports, so spot on.
Awesome. Now, on the side of the British Hurricane, we have a triple DPS composition. Now, a triple DPS composition, it was actually kind of funny. I spoke about this more recently, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, where I consider this a practice composition. We're seeing the same combo of Lucio and Zenyatta in the fact that they have those double defensive support ults, whereas the Lucio has the ability to protect the Zenyatta. And then we have 3 DPS players. So we have Havakul on the Soldier, who, because he's not as mobile, is going to be more of a backline protector. However, we're going to have Fusions, KYB, and Craggy as the divers here. So, first of all, what do you think about British Hurricane not running the Diva here? Do they not have a Diva player?
They do. So Haffy is regarded as the super flex player for Hurricane. He plays seemingly everything. He's played Pharah, he's played Sombra, here he's on the Diva. This guy will basically play what the team needs him to play. And obviously, in this case, they opt for this kind of triple role on Nepal Sanctum. And I think this is something that Trib mentioned. This is what they do every time they play on Sanctum, is just go for this straight rollout comp.
Now, this composition is definitely on the damage heavy side of thing. And the Bok, and chat's making fun of me. Is this Kib? Or so, how do you pronounce this?
Kib, yeah.
Kib.
We call it Kib.
Kib.
It's probably KYB. We call him Kib.
Okay, he's Kib.
Or do we call him KYB? Kib, yeah. Kib.
Kib.
It's not. No. We thought it was Kib, but KYB, I was like, what?
Okay. Kib. Sorry, chat. It's Kib. But yeah, Bok is just going to... There's going to be pretty much no question about it. Bok is going to have to keep...
KYB.
Huh?
Kib.
What are you on about, Tred?
The notorious KYB.
The notorious KYB.
Oh,
so that's what they say when they say the notorious.
No, he's just mocking me. He's just mocking me. So, Bok is going to want to keep the Harmony on Fusions, because especially without that Diva, the Harmony Orb and Fusions wanting to try and stay in his armor is going to be the only chance of survivability. So, you can think of the British Hurricanes composition as more of a glass cannon, and the primary goal, or target rather, of British Hurricanes is definitely either going to be Reaper or Nil, because the Hurricanes themselves have such little sustain with a triple DPS dive that they have to murder things real fucking quick. There's no other way that they're going to survive. Diva is absolutely monstrous here. Diva is one of the better tanks that there are in the game to actually kill Winston, because if Winston jumps, Diva can boost effort. The micro missiles do an absolutely crazy amount of damage. The fusion cannons headshot if they get into a little bit of a 1v1, and fusions can't shield dance. And on top of that, Winston's gun itself does just less damage to the 200 armor on the Diva mech here. So British Hurricane is definitely running more of a glass cannon composition here. And Happy Cool, Bok, and Funny Astro will probably be in the backline. So we are going to see a 3-3 dive from the British Hurricane likely as well. But most notably, it's going to be triple DPS. It's going to be, I'm hiding that, it's triple DPS. So, in terms of which team I favor, I definitely favor Team Gigantti for the simple presence of the Diva. I think Diva is, way too strong not to run. And especially when British Hurricanes, their only sustain present is fusions, and Team Gigantti can simply focus fusions down here. I don't really see, unless British Hurricanes very much outskills Team Gigantti, I don't see British Hurricanes being very successful with this composition. One of the ways that, again, if I had perfect intel, one of the ways that you could play this as Team Gigantti is kind of move up slowly with the Winston and the Diva, since you do have the Soldier Zenyatta as well. Like, they have Soldier and Zenyatta, but you have Soldier and Zenyatta as well as a Diva, so you're going to win the poke phase. And if they do try and go for these really squishy targets on your team, like the Zenyatta or the Soldier, then LH Cloudy and RCH can both kind of peel and just delete fusions from the game. So that's go ahead.
I was going to say the big kind of like thing that I noticed with the Hurricane comp, looking back at it now, I guess, looking at the comps now, like the one big difference it feels Hurricane have got is with the Tracer, the Genji, and the Winston, as well as the support from the Battler and the Soldier. It's kind of 3-3, but it's almost like 3.5 on the dive as well, because that harassment coming from Haffy, assuming he lands his shot right, it's going to make it a lot harder to be able to get rid of the damage from both of the diving DPS and the Soldier in the backline, as well as the Winston causing chaos. Like, I think although they've got the really nice 3-3 on the side of Gigantti as well, like someone will most definitely die very quickly because of the amount of threat they've got being aimed at that one particular individual that they really want to die.
Absolutely. I don't think it's any questions about is Fusion's going to die. He's going to die, especially. But it's pretty much a question of how much can the British Hurricanes actually kill before they go down. So
absolutely.
With that, let's take a look.
To be a bit more stable in terms of their tank line. RCK coming out of the Diva. It's going to be a lot of damage to kind of heal up, and with Ripper and Meza.
Wow, that's a unfortunate pickup right off the start. No, is he discorded as well? Let's go back. Is he discorded? I'm not sure. Arrow keys, please. Oh, it's not going to work for me. Is he discorded?
Their tank line. RCK coming out of the Diva. It's going to be a lot of damage to kind of heal.
He was discorded.
With Ripper and Meza being also.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Aggressive.
Really early pickup. Craggy's already on the flank. And this is what we're talking about. This position with Craggy is something that you definitely don't see from just teams that I suppose are a little bit worse at dive themselves. Is that, and we've talked about this multiple times where, let's move that there. So a lot of teams that are trying to just start learning dive will kind of start in one location, and then once the Winston dives in, the Tracer will blink forward, and then the Genji will kind of like dash forward to join the dive. But you can see that Craggy immediately went through connector and started flanking around the right side, setting up that really, really early dive, because as soon as Fusions was to jump in, Craggy would have blinked in and been right there on top of applying damage, if not at the exact moment that Fusions landed on a target, very slightly afterwards. But here with Nil being taken out, Team Gigantti's main advantage of playing a slower composition is completely gone, and British Hurricanes is just collapsing on the people who retreated out to the Mega here. Oop, I have the wrong button. That is my pen.
How does Neil just get executed first? Craggy making his way into the back, and he's already.
I'm surprised Team Gigantti didn't just straight up suicide or retreat.
If you clip yourself on those stairs, though, I've had it many a time where you just kind of fall
kind of
flat.
A slow staggered retreat more than anything else.
Yeah, like one of the main reasons why this first fight is so important is that neither team has any ult charge, and if one team so very dramatically wins the first fight, not only will they have control of the point, but they also have ult economy in their favor, which can be extremely difficult, especially on a map like Sanctum, where the defending team can abuse map geometry to their advantage. It can be very difficult to get people off of the point who have ult economy and the ability to maintain ult economy on top of you. So they probably didn't want to reset because it was just Half-a-Cool who died, and he can rejoin the fight very quickly. However, Craggy did get a significant amount of ult charge off farming Cloudy before he actually got out here. And even now, you're looking at it, Cloudy's below half health on this jump in. So yeah, I'm not sure if they fully stabilized before they actually went back in, or if he just took like a discorded Helix rocket or something like that. But even now, Cloudy's taking a lot of damage on the jump in, and RCK is right behind him, which should be mitigating most of this with the defense matrix here. So
yeah, keep an eye as well on that. Nil has switched over to Genji from the Soldier.
Oh, right, because Nil was the individual who got killed. Happy
Yeah.
Cool killed Nil, and so they've moved off of their kind of 3-3 hybrid into 4-2 full dive. So, and so if they're doing 4-2 full dive, I kind of just like glossed over it, but Nil is right here, right? Nil's right here. And when we're talking about dive itself, we just referenced it. Oh, I forgot to turn that off. We got a new sub. Zenkan, thank you so much for the Prime sub. I've got to mute you. Not mute you, but just mute notifications in general so that it doesn't interrupt the analysis. I apologize, stream. Okay, but we're talking about this here, where Craggy went all the way through connector and then came in here, so that if Cloudy was going to jump over pillars, Craggy would be right here on the side as fusions arrived in this location. But here, Cloudy's diving in. RCK either doesn't have defense matrix or has run out of it, because Cloudy is going to be arriving at very low health here. Now, Davin. Davin? Did I get that right?
Go with Darwin. It's Davin, but go with Darwin.
Dave.
You're good.
Fuck it. He's on the side here. He's ready to actually respond to this dive here. But Nil is a little bit late to the party. And if they are going to be trying to take out what looks to be Happy Cool, so I think their dive target is Happy Cool here. But if they want to take out Happy Cool, right, the dive tanks are the ones who are going to be, making space. The tracer is normally for the like the continuous damage, and then Nil here on the Genji, the main contribution that Genji supplies to dive is his burst combo, so his finishing. And with him in this position, and I also don't know the status of his cooldowns, but Team Gigantti, they're running 4-2 dive, but they only have the effectiveness of 3. If Nil does have his Swift Strike, he's going to have to use it to get to the dive instead of using it to combo down whatever they actually dove on. Thoughts? Yes? No? See
Yes.
anything I missed? Perfect.
You're gonna get a lot of. You're gonna get a lot of yeses.
Cool. So at
during all
the
of this.
start, I'm going to be doing a lot of the analysis myself, but as we move on, we'll pass more of it on to you.
No real contention, although Gigantti comes straight back in, abusing the fact that British Hurricane had to play around the point for the time being.
Yeah, Cloudy drops just off the fact that he was very low off of that jump in.
Behind the mech on RCK. Draggy is, however, forced to use his recall. Now he's got Davin inside.
Yep.
The rest of his team are there. And this is exactly
You're going against a really high damage, triple DPS Zenyatta. If your initial dive doesn't kill something, man, are you in a bad position here. So still no ultimates online. So let's just see how the next fight plays out, because no compositional dives, full dive versus the triple DPS. So Team Gigantti doesn't have the option to take any poke. They're going to be wanting to look for a very early dive onto either Bach or Happy Cool, or if Fusions is in a position where he can be caught out, I suppose. If he dives a little bit too early, then they can very easily burn him without the support of a diva.
Of a solo operator, and he doesn't need to be, because the other DPS are picking up the slack that may be there. But now Team Gigantti, they need to
Going
batten
right
down
side.
the hatches and weather the storm, because British Hurricane, they're accruing their...
This is a little bit interesting. What do you think about them going right side and stabilizing out by Mega?
I think because they sprinted so far forward last time from one side of the Sanctum to the other to try and get the dive off, and saw what happened with Nil being behind. I imagine the communication on right. Let's prep, let's stage. In the middle on the health packs, we've got that security there. Our healers are relatively safe at the back because any divers risk being near the edge in this case and might find themselves boots up by the SAR. I kind of get it. The problem is here, they've only got these 3 here. The supports, I think, are still off to the right-hand side, so they're in trouble of being exposed themselves, and this fight could just play out the other way around where the Hurricane realised that and just dive straight onto those supports who are totally in isolation, unless they're behind the Monkey, which I don't think they are.
What do you think about going right here up at the Mega instead of, for example, flanking left through Connector? There's a Mega at Connector, as well as if you go through Connector, it's a little bit more of a choke point, but you can definitely get closer without giving that soldier the nice sight lines. Do you think it's the right decision to go at this Mega out here, or would you have preferred to see them go through Connector, for example?
It's kind of half-half. Like you say, there's a Mega on either side. Both sides have... To be honest with you, playing into Happy probably would have been better off going right-hand side, because Soldier sightlines on the left are going to be better looking onto the left-hand side than onto the right, I think. Maybe they were just a little bit wary of only having the one push point for themselves. They knew they'd either have to funnel all through the bottom or out of the backhand door and putting yourself there when you've got a triple DPS where they're more than happy to entertain you and welcome you, you could say, trying to come through a choke point. Maybe that's the thinking behind it, but like you say, I actually think the other side would have been a bit smarter.
Fusions is actually stopped by in chat, the main tank player for
the
British
boys,
Hurricanes.
yeah.
Says right side stabilizing is good in my opinion. They're way more likely to get a kill from here with full HP, or at least force our rotate. No argument there, my friend.
More
No
likely to get a kill from here with full HP. Yeah, okay. Reasonable.
Yeah, so force the rotate basically. Like, if you so that's kind of the downside of connector, is if you do go connector, the enemy team, if they keep holding in their position where they would hold for a normal attack, then connector puts them in a really nice location to dive onto the Zenyatta or the soldier. But going on this right side puts them, if they do actually want to rotate, it puts them at a little bit of a more of a positional disadvantage, because over by connector there are those, they're not quite choke points, but they are certainly more narrow passages where cleave is going to be a lot higher here.
Yeah, that's my main worry.
Cool. Let's see how they do it.
Percentage, they are brewing up some strong wins and they're ready to come down upon the side of Team Gigantti.
Cloudy's still taking a lot of damage before the dive.
Ouch. That was like a one-man dive almost from him. Everyone else kind of struggling to catch up.
Yeah, so that's kind of 2 dives in a row now that we've seen. RCK hasn't really been very Johnny on the spot with his defense matrix. It's very important that RCK eat, not just random spam damage, but the real big, the big cooldowns like Helix Rockets, for example. But Cloudy's taking a lot of damage pre-dive, so he's landing on targets without armor. And yes, he died there to the pulse bomb, but he's this is still the second dive that he's arrived at, significantly low health. So they spent the time stabilizing on the right side, but when they went out, Cloudy still didn't get the the defense matrix covering him to the extent that I would have liked before the actual dive triggered. Okay, so this fight, we're finally getting ultimates online. Let's give this to you. What do you think about the ultimate status, and which ultimates do you think are going to come out in what order?
So I think if you're looking on the side of Hurricane, they've basically got 5 ults online. We'll get the blade on before this fight really kicks underway, unless it's a very, very quick wipe onto him from Gigantti, which is unlikely.
Yep.
They've got both defensive ults online. Praying we don't see the 2 defensive ults stacked, as we've seen a few teams do it in panic, and that just burns completely the defensive setup they've got. However, Sanctum, being them out with a lot of environmental on there, with Fusions having his ult pretty good for the knock-ins to the middle, or at least disrupting them as they go for the dive. So a good opportunity, I think, for Hurricane to not so much counter-dive, but completely shut down the dive as it comes onto them. More of an anti-dive setup with this ultimate setup, I think.
Absolutely.
And happy with his ultimate. He finds one flank off to the left or right-hand side, wherever the other team isn't. They're going to be some very exposed supports at the back. And if they manage to burn the ult out of Ripper defensively, rather than using it offensively to try and win a dive, well, Hurricane are probably in a pretty good spot with the setup they've got right now. And that's not even thinking about the Blade, for example.
So, Team Gigantti, this is now the 3rd team fight. You've lost the past 2. You're behind on ult economy. What do you do? Where do you go? Do you stabilize out at the Mega and try the attack once more? How you're down on ult economy.
Yeah.
So how do you play this? If you lose this fight, and we've got basically 1 long fight or 2 quick fights remaining. So how would you go about this here?
Well, I think in both cases it's been a mistiming issue rather than an itself. First time with the full dive, Nil was behind. We saw that, and they just lost very, very quickly. But the second time around, when they staged onto the right by the Mega, again, smart idea. Everyone was on pretty much full health. They were pretty safe there and tucked away. Then the dive came through, and RCK just didn't get the follow through with Cloudy. So either they need to give this one more go and go for it quick, again with the staging on the right-hand side, go for the dive onto the support so you can kind of see in the back right corner through the window, or they need to go for something a bit more slower and more methodical. But we've already said for Hurricane, they've got triple DPS. They're going to win out these fights if you don't kill someone straight away. So it's kind of forcing Gigantti's hand into the full dive early on, which, as we've seen so far, hasn't really paid off for them. So mistakes are being forced more than anything else by Hurricane. Yeah,
I'd definitely like to see the quick dive onto the supports here. One, if not both of them, have support ultimates at this point. If you are tracking ults, which these are contenders teams, I would expect for them to be tracking ultimates. So whether or not Reaper would actually use his Transcendence here to kind of sustain, if you do the hard dive onto Funny Astro and Bach, probably one of them are going to support ult. I'd like to see Bach, trance before Funny Astro beats. But if Reaper used his Transcendence, they could maybe get the second one out and then have Masa having his barrier for the final fight at 99%. But let's not overanalyze this to the nines. Let's see what they actually pulled off.
To counter Davin's Pulse Bomb here with...
Yeah, that was a rhetorical question. Everyone tracks ultimates.
It's very good at mitigating burst damage, whereas you'd be more likely to see...
So Transcendence from both teams.
Wow, popped early.
Very early. And it was off screen, we didn't see why.
And the sound barrier for Craggy. And the blade comes out too.
And they are just cutting through them. RCK
So that was actually the first time you've really seen Hurricane push back onto Gigantti, because so far it's been Gigantti themselves, where Kane thought, well, we've got ult advantage here, hands down, let's force them back as best we can.
They did use both support ults for the pleasure, though.
More aggressive support.
And now they have Beat Blade coming in, which is going to kill at least Happy Cool. Ooh, nice Pulse Bomb. Now they probably, with that Pulse Bomb onto Happy Cool, I'm not sure if I still would have used Blade. Because that if you wipe them here, they're not going to have support ultimate. So with that Pulse Bomb, I wouldn't it was probably the plan. Maybe it's very hard to say what should have been done when this is 99%. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of chaos in the communication, and nobody really has time to analyze this. We're talking about a 2 or 3 second window where situations changed and your action should have changed. So I'm not saying that I would have expected Team Gigantti to actually hold Neil's Blade based off Devin landing the Pulse Bomb, like 2 seconds earlier. But right, if you look at the side of the British Hurricanes, there are like 3 of them are really getting lower on health. Team Gigantti definitely has the advantage. They've used Cloudy's Primal and actually to get onto the point here, which is going to give them a pretty significant advantage. I'm not sure if they actually need any more ultimates to actually win this out, unless Blade or Beat, certainly. But I'm not sure.
Both.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't want to use both here.
To open it up, Neil died to a funny Astro of all people as he was using that Dragon Blade. The bomb does miss from Craggy, and the beat's been dropped by Team Gigantti. All 5 members have been hit, but RCK gets
nice Break Break is going to force this self-destruct. Craggy's probably going to finish off Cloudy.
It's almost like full panic mode for Gigantti. They've literally just burned every single ultimate to make sure they 100% win this point.
And that's a very common thing. It's way better to use your ultimates and actually cap the point than to not use your ultimates and, end up actually not winning the team fight. So it's really common for teams, especially in the 99-0 situation, for teams to overall, just to make sure that they actually do capture the point. However, that also leads to the same situation where it's very common for teams who are defending in a 99-0 situation to not use ultimates, so that even if they do lose the fight at 99-0, if Team Gigantti over-ults but British Hurricanes holds on to theirs, it gives them a sizable advantage on the retake here. But Fusions used Primal and Craggy used Pulse Bomb. Craggy already farmed back half of his Blade here, Pulse Bomb, but Team Gigantti across the board, other than Devin, are really low on ultimates. So I don't, just off of ult economy, Happy Cool, Kib, Craggy are all going to have ultimates coming online before Masa and Reaper get their defensive support ultimates. So this is just a ticking time bomb. Unless there's some really crazy plays coming out, British Hurricanes, I would suspect, are either going to take it back in this fight or the fight after.
Complete reset here, 99% and
just Hurricane forcing their hand time and time again, really.
Absolutely. And not even just forcing their hand, but very calmly and collectedly punishing the mistakes that Gigantti are making, and minor mistakes, but especially against a super high damage composition like 3 DPS, missing things like defense matrixing your Winston in just absolutely cost you.
Sorry, Tracer and Zen end up biting the dust. Kib is going to be able to back out. Does have a blade to his name, though. And something we speak about LH Cloud is he did remind me as he popped up on the kill feed there. The only one actually to go down in that engagement from Gigantti is his Reinhardt is also spectacular. But
okay,
that trans comes online for Ripper in perfect timing as well.
Okay, so here we've got here we got, just as you said, Rip has got Trance. Now, Hurricanes here, coming up on both support ults as well as 2 DPS ults. If you're the Hurricanes, how do you approach this?
Basically do what they've done previously and just completely like literally 2 fights ago when Gigantti 1 or 2 ults, Hurricane had 5.
Mm-hmm.
They just went for the clean, flat-out wipe and pushed them all the way back to base. So for Gigantti, again, it's that horrible situation of where you're going to lose either way. You either have to back off the point or you stay and get wiped. Like, I don't know. Either way for it, they're going to lose that 99% unless they throw something at this. Maybe you rely on them mistiming some stuff and Ripper's Trans comes online at the perfect time and denies both the visor and the blade. However, that's a lot of stacking damage and will out-damage the healing coming through from Ripper potentially if Hurricane focus on the right target. They've also got the sound barrier online, so if they want to go for that last combo we saw previously where they drop the sound barrier and then Kib goes in, they've got that available to them as well to then layer with the Transcendence afterwards.
Let's play a game.
Okay.
What order do you think the ultimates are going to come out in?
Oh, we did this the other day. Okay. I think most likely what we will see is sound barrier first. It's kind of cheating because it's online. Sound barrier first, I imagine. Probably pops into the blade alongside the tack visor, I think. And then Bot will maybe use the Transcendence if it's required towards the end of that fight, unless Craggy gets the Pulse Bomb online first. In which
we
case
don't usually consider Pulse Bombs in this. Pulse Bomb, it just happens with the trade. Yeah.
Okay, Barrier Blade Trance, I think is about right. If they need the Trance.
For me, I think the order is going to be definitely Barrier first. Well, do I have, like, where did you put Visor?
Visor, I think I slid just in after Blade if needed.
Okay.
So Blade definitely first going, and then when the Chaos is going on with the Genji Blade, you see the Visor come.
That's no fun. That's the same order I would have picked.
Well, it's nice to know I'm at least doing something.
Let's see if we're both. We'll see if we're both right or if we're both just way off the mark here.
Okay, let's see.
I can't remember what happens here. Fusion's again in chat here. I can't remember what happens here, but I think we most likely pop, beat, and dive in to force their trance. Yes, that's what I would expect. Followed by Blade Visor cleanup. Likely, I wouldn't Visor first, just because you can do Blade to either kill squishies or do a shit ton of damage to their tank, and then Visor is so good at cleanup, especially on Sanctum, with the really nice sightline. So I'd definitely like to see Blade before Visor here. But let's see how it goes.
But Winston has been rather lackluster over the last couple of weeks, especially in these dive compositions. Sometimes puts himself out of sight of his
taking a lot slower. They're not going directly onto the team of Gigantti. There's Barrier.
Kib's
You got it wrong.
Kib's actually still holding on as well.
Well, the good thing here is that Trance has come out, so now Blade is free.
Right, I actually like what they did with that as well, because essentially what they saw was that Ripper was going to be forced to burn his Trance. He heard that Visor line, he was like, crap, gotta press Q. Brought out the Trance, and then Kib just, it was a waiting game, right? Wait 4 or 5 seconds, and then you go in with the Blade, and there is nothing left to keep those guys alive. Like you say, if they were tracking ults properly, they would have known Massar didn't have his ultimate online. That barrier wasn't there to save his team when he came in with the Blade.
Let's take a look at this again in like slower motion here.
Weeks, especially in these dive compositions.
So here we are, there's just poking and posturing, and British Hurricanes decides to go to the point to kind of force Gigantti's hand. So instead of diving onto Gigantti, they kind of want to force the objective. Now, this is a pretty decent idea, but the only reason that you would actually force point instead of forcing the fight is if you are planning to use Visor. Because if they try and contest you on the point, popping Visor immediately is going to force them to deal with the Visor or pop Transcendence. But if they used their actual mobility to get onto the point, they then can't reuse mobility to get onto Soldier. So
very hard
here we go. What are the tanks going to do? So Barrier comes out from Barrier Visor. So here we go. Thankfully, Craggy turned around. But Barrier and Visor come out in response to the tanks moving to the point, right? So as soon as Winston has committed to the point, Happy Cool knows he's safe. So Barrier comes out just for sustain, and Happy Cool with D.Va and Winston moving to the point. They are now exposed, in danger, and Happy Cool's got a really nice visor using his sightlines.
He doesn't have that orb on him. They're going to break it down, or at least Hurricane will. Won't land.
That's going to force the Transcendence.
Yeah.
Funny Astro doing funny Astro things. Go ahead.
I was about to say, it's almost like they forced Gigantti point probably out of fear of that ultimate combo coming online, and they're all having to pile back into the point last second, which is why Ripper's ult came out. You'd argue a little bit late, potentially, when everyone was piling back onto the point, but like you say, I guess it doesn't matter too much because Astro managed to get the boop onto Cloudy after he jumped onto the point. Again, just forcing mistakes because of their position. they were forced to use their movement abilities getting onto the point, which meant a nice and easy free kill for Astro.
Absolutely. Now, Fusions actually says, so we had to force Visor for Trance, though. Actually, a misplay. Saying this is a misplay. Interesting.
Huh.
I think we forced beat a bit early there when Repo was out of range to dive. Yeah, Blade definitely seemed like it wasn't completely necessary. Like, anytime you're planning to use beat as an offensive tool to engage, you don't want to use it literally before the fight starts. You kind of want to have people taking a little bit of damage or, thoroughly engaged, then beats, because unlike Transcendence, you can heal people up underneath barrier as barrier's running out here. So I agree with you that the barrier seemed a little bit early, but misplay.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain the misplay a little bit more?
I think when he's saying that Ripper, they forced beat a bit too early, I kind of agree. Like, they pushed onto the point and they weren't under any immediate threat. Like, you would argue maybe that Fusion's going low already. He's down to that 400 HP point. 400 HP, about 200 HP point. He loses his health quite quick, so it's more of a panic for them, potentially. Look at his health bar there. Goes way down. Sits at this point for a small while, then takes another small chunk, I think. And in fact, no, that's where Astro stacks his own ultimate on top. Sorry about that. I don't know. Maybe he's right there. Maybe it was a bit too early, because look at the health bars. Like, no one's really lost anything except for Fusion's losing half his health bar.
So Fusions again says, I think our plan was likely to beat and dive with the beat on Reaper to force the trance, support ult for support ult. Yeah, that's what we had expected as well. But I suppose moving to the point, we assumed that was the plan, not a mistake. It definitely worked out for you because, again, you committed, like, Gigantti was forced to commit the mobility, and then Happy Cool gets a free visor. And in that way, it still forced the support ult. It was just a roundabout way of doing so. And this should, unless something crazy happens, this should lead to the map win for the Hurricane.
Yeah, I think what he was saying about wanting to use the beat to then dive onto Ripper, like, I understand the idea behind that, but I guess they actually Gigantti's hand because they backed off point so quick as well that they didn't need to dive him to force the ult. He had to, or else they lost point.
Oh, that's what he's saying. Because we forced beat early, Reaper moves away, and we were getting poked, so we had to use it early, and also force visor to force it out. We had more ults here, so it was just a favorable scenario. Yeah, there was very... If you had lost this fight, it would have been a little bit questionable with that huge of an ultimate advantage.
Once that was out of the way,
Oh.
he smelled the blood in the water, Jaws. He drew
I'm
out
going to
his
have to add
blade.
Fusions to my list of people to
And he
attack
cut
with questions when I've
Gigantti
got
into
some
some
now. I don't
finished
should promise
Susie.
anymore.
Well,
Share the
that
burden.
Sanctum will go over for the first map point for British Hurricane, and now Gigantti have
Let's
their
see what they
opportunity to
run
play this
on,
triple tank or play around Reinhardt's shield.
Village. This is
LH
Village.
Cloudy, he has to kind of stick on this, I feel. They are very, very good at playing around his aggression.
Oh, this is
and
the
combos with
both
dab
teams going match
inside.
for match, I think, for the most part. So both teams run out the gate with triple tank and Junkrat. And this is one of the ones I want to get your thoughts on. There's a very key part or key 30 seconds in this match, which I think is really worth taking a look at.
Okay, so you've seen this match before, so I'm going to pause it 5 seconds as per usual. Take it away. I'll draw to your description of the compositions.
Sure. So for both of them, look at Gigantti for the case in this set, since we're on that side. Looking at the very standard triple tank style setup, you've got your big front line with the Moira backing it for the most part. They want to stick together as a very close unit with the Junkrat sat likely behind them in the shield area as well, so they're still safe. And like with any tank-heavy composition, you're taking the Lucio almost exclusively for the movement around that one as well. So the idea is you're sticking the shields up, you're keeping everyone alive with the Diva, with the Defense Matrix, with the shields coming out, well, the barriers, sorry, coming out of the Zarya, and then just letting the Junkrat do his job. And this will very much so come down to which Reinhardt dies first or which shield gets dropped by the either side's Junkrat in this case.
It's kind of... now, I view this composition actually a little bit differently than you. So... you said that this composition was, kind of a really strong front line, the barrier to manage the aggression, RCK's defense matrix on top of that, and then you kind of just let the Junkrat, do his work. That's correct? So
yeah.
I think it's a lot more effective in this side of composition, especially since you have so much or so many aggression management tools, if you will. That's a really fancy way of saying ways to stay alive. You've got a shit ton of armor on your main tank, your Reinhardt, a shit ton of armor on your actual defensive, your off tank. Now, Reapa's got the area of effect heal. He doesn't care how many people take damage. If one person takes damage or 3 people take damage, it doesn't matter. He can heal them at the same rate, and he can heal them at a pretty ridiculous rate here. And the more aggressive LH Cloudy and RC TK are, the more charge Davin can get, and the more gravitons the Davin can get. And if Davin gets a graviton and LH Cloudy doesn't have hammer, he can swing into it to get hammer. So I think one of the main benefits of running triple tank composition is not just kind of making space for your Junkrat to do work. The main reason that you would do something like this is your tanks themselves do have to apply damage as well. They have to act as DPSs. So if you have one team playing a lot more passive, then the team who's playing more aggressive is going to win this. They're going to have more ultimates. They're going to have more control, and they're going to be able to dictate the flow of the fight. Now, it is kind of weird on especially such a Pharah heavy map as Village to see a composition that has pretty much no counter to Pharmacy. So it's a question mark to me why both teams are running this composition, whereas the other maps on Village that I've seen have either been like full dive or modified with the Somber Tracer or Pharmacy. So I find it very interesting that neither team has an answer for a potential Pharmacy coming out from the other side. So that's the big question mark for me, but in a mirror matchup like this, it won't matter. And why Junkrat? So Junkrat's not here just for general damage. In triple or quad tank, Junkrat gets his ultimate extremely fast, and Junkrat is one of the only ultimates that can very quickly murder a tank or Moira. It can force Moira's fade and then just follow her around and kill her. And the only really things that can, challenge a Riptire is a Fire Strike, which is generally pretty easy to avoid for a Junkrat. Or the other Junkrat on the enemy team landing a concussion mine on it. So Riptire is a huge win condition and a counter to triple and quad tank. So like quad tank was what was originally run when people were experimenting with Lucio Moira, but quad tank has too many counters, one of which is the Junkrat. So having the Junkrat and the Riptire as insurance against triple and quad is just kind of the popular way of thinking about these compositions. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on there in terms of saying what the expansion. One funny comment I suppose to say is there's a flat here whenever we play games together. Like Trib will often play Ryan, and the first thing he'll say after the first fight is he'll just type in group chat, gold damage, by the way, because like you say, the tank compositions are looking to just smash together.
Absolutely.
And I think it was you who said, actually, or maybe I was on Reddit, I can't fully remember, was that if a Ryan is getting ult and his gold damage, there's two reasons. Either one, they are running far too close to your Ryan and he's getting free swings, or two, your Ryan is playing hyper aggressive and your team are kind of struggling to keep him alive.
I don't think that was me, but I don't straight up disagree. That's that's not a hard disagree, but yeah, and like the other big benefit about running very aggressive, especially on your diva, can be more protector, because especially when you're running against this sort of comp, there's never going to be like a squishy out of position or a high ground you need to contest on diva or anything like that. But like Hammer Down and Graviton are both team wipe ultimates. If your tanks are playing more aggressive, they're providing more damage output, you just get more win conditions coming online than the enemy team if they just kind of sit passively and make space for their Junkrat. But enough about that. Let's take a look at how this actually happens here.
On heart of his own.
Yeah, we know Cloudy is a master of a swing, but it's time for Fusions to step up to a plate, and already he's falling so low. He's going to need to save some shield strength, but he's been thrown away. The rest of his team isn't going to have the protection now as LH Cloud is secured for high ground for his team. Nil's going to be able to, with no threats, rain down these bombs.
What I really liked about Hurricane's little niche thing there is once Fusion's got knocked off the high ground, they all to him to stick with him. So it wasn't like they were kind of like, guys, we've got to hold the high ground. That's our strategy here. They were very quick to follow the tank and stay as a unit.
Yeah, they definitely did, and especially it was mostly the concussion mine from Nil that separated Fusions from the British Hurricane there, and Fusions got knocked like a significant distance to his left, which kind of opened up the backline, the rest of his composition, to taking a lot more damage. And I suppose the only criticism I have of Gigantti's is the fact that Nil got his Riptire and he used it in a one fight. So now British Hurricanes is going to have the ultimate advantage for the retake. However, if we're comparing like Davin's ultimate charge to Craggy's, Team Gigantti does have alternative win conditions online, and is Bach using Coalescence right now? Did he just pop it?
Looks like he is, yeah.
Oh, that's a bit interesting. So Nil does use Riptire and not get anything out of it, and Coalescence is coming out a little bit early, despite Fusions and Happy Cool having gone down. So
It's probably one thing I've slightly undersold Davin on, is we always say his Tracer is, to be fair, in this series, his Zarya was one of Craggy's.
yeah, so here we're seeing the same thing. The Graviton and the Coalescence were comboed, but then Cloudy himself swings into it to get his Hammer Down. Like, he has Hammer Down here, but unfortunately from the side of the... words are hard. Unfortunately from the side of Gigantti, Davin's Coalescence was not enough to actually... Or sorry, Davin's Grav into Reaper's Coalescence was not actually enough to take them out, since Funny Astro had used Beat. Cloudy wasn't there until too late into the Grav to actually get effect, so they wasted 2 major ultimates to try and hold on to the point, and they both ended up not getting as much value as you'd like to see. So coming in for the next point, Gigantti taking the high ground here. Because the real big benefit of taking this high ground here is that you have options to rotate. If the enemy team goes around the right side towards the point, you can just drop right beneath here and kind of contest them there. So they have to take you, because you can just put like one pinky toe on the point and they can't do diddly squat unless they actually kill you. Whereas if they go left onto this high ground or through kitchen, you can a lot more easily kind of speed to meet them and then spam them into these 2 little chokes. So in terms of like the ultimates, Hurricane have their Coalescent, which is nice, and their Graviton. So whether they combo these 2, or if they combo Craggy with Happy Cool, it's most likely that they'll do kind of just the Coalescence itself to keep everybody alive, as they more or less just press W into the Graviton. And on the side of Gigantti, they do have Masa coming up on the Sound Barrier, as well as the Hammer Down and the Riptire. So Riptire, definitely, it's always going to be a factor in these sort of fights, because, if Nil does manage to take out Bach, the Moira, if either team ever loses a Moira in this sort of composition, then they're more or less fucked. They have no sustain. Moira is the only character that makes these sort of compositions function, even in the slightest. So, especially if Bach kind of commits to the Coalescence, if Nil can Riptire moves faster than the speed boost that Bach gets from Coalescence, and he can just hunt him down. Coalescence can't be cancelled, you can't fade during Coalescence, and that Riptire just takes out Moira, and as long as the rest of Gigantti survives Craggy's Grav, then they'll be able to push back on and retake the point.
Of course, LH Cloudy, I feel he did.
So yeah, especially against a team with the Junkrat, you don't usually want to be going left or kitchen. So going main, going right side to point, probably trying to take a very aggressive stance on the point in order to flip the cap, even without a team fight, is probably going to be Gigantti's best option here.
Didn't have as much effect in that as
could you play Anna instead of Moira in this comp? No, definitely not.
So that RTK could have got a better combination.
Not enough healing.
Alas, that was not the case. And now Fusions is ready to match the...
So there's the Graviton and there's the Riptire. So Graviton from Craggy, but Riptire from Nil. So these aren't from the same team here. And nobody has popped an ultimate on the side of Gigantti in order to actually combo with this Graviton. Like, Bach hasn't popped Coalescence immediately here. So what do you think their plan is? Well, Craggy grabs them right at the choke, lands them, it doesn't get eaten, but what's Gigantti's plan here?
This is where the 2 really interest. This is the kind of 30-second period I was going to touch on. Final fight, we saw Davin pop an ultimate, and nothing really came of it. Hurricane still won. This fight is the big decisive one for Hurricane, where they just show, this is the first of many, where they just start showing that their combos with the Graviton are just infinitely better and more planned out than what Gigantti's are. In terms of what they're looking to do, I think with the setup they've got, they know they've got 3 or 4 members in here. They know there's a barrier sat right at the very front, so anything they throw out right now is going to get caught, so Fusions probably doesn't want to ult here immediately. I think either they throw the Happy's self-destruct forward here, or, like you say, the Coalescence maybe. Or maybe they want to save that for a fight, because with the way things are going right now, they hold the point. They don't need to force super hard here and burn too many ults doing it. So they're trying to be more conservative with their plan, I think.
Yeah, the Grav does not immediately make sense to me, especially if they did not plan to combo with Coalescence. And one of the big ways that you combo with Coalescence is not to actually kill the people in the Grav with the Coalescence, but it allows your Reinhardt and your Diva to basically attack the people in the Graviton from point blank range without actually dying. Because a Reinhardt, as awesome as it is to actually swing into Graviton, you're still like mano a mano with 4, 5, or 6 enemies who can very quickly murder you. So, like when we're talking about comboing with Coalescence, it's not just that the Coalescence is dealing 70 damage piercing to everyone in the Graviton, but it's dealing 140 healing piercing to all of your tanks that are assisting with the damage. And I saw the message in chat here, but Diva Bomb is not normally used as a combo in Graviton, especially against a triple or a quad tank composition, because they have these Zarya barriers, which will block line of sight, as well as just Reinhardt can shield it if he is on the edge. So Diva Bomb being more commonly used as either like a remech or a zoning in triple and quad, because very rarely does Diva Bomb actually get a lot of value out of Grav here. Now, that being said, we are seeing that Davin used one of his bubbles, and it looks like Fusions is on the front, so maybe the bomb gets value here, but it is very, very difficult to get a lot of value out of a Diva Bomb into a Grav. Yes, I get what's about to happen. Chat is spoiling it for me, but
That's no
but
fun.
still, it doesn't change that in general, it's very hard to get a large amount of kills with Diva Bomb into a Graviton, especially when the enemy has full resources. Like, look at where they actually grabbed it. They grabbed them right at the choke point here. Gigantti should have all of their resources available to them. They should have their shield. They should have both of their Zarya bubbles. So Bomb should not get very much value.
Well, there's the grab. Self-Destruct's going to send in as well. The hammer does hit the floor, but it doesn't matter. Happy Fool finds the
So
four-piece.
let's watch that again.
So they broke shield really quick on Cloudy.
Did Cloudy hammered though? Cloudy hammered. Cloudy hammered.
Wasn't
Right?
there to protect them. Alas, that was not the case.
What?
And now
Did
what's
Cloudy
the shield?
try
I
and
think
hammer
he
the
got-
Diva Bomb? I bet you Cloudy tried to hammer the Diva Bomb. Because
You reckon?
bombs, like the Diva Bomb, the exploding mech itself can be shattered. So if you shattered the Diva Bomb, it would stop in place and you could shield the explosion.
If I take anything away from the stream today, that's the one fact I'm going to remember. Because I didn't know that before, I'll be honest.
You can have a lot of really like you can hook Diva Bomb. There's a lot of real fucking weird
yeah, I've
interactions.
seen the hook, which is kind of cool. Never knew you could shatter it. That's cool.
So there's the shield, and his shield is very heavily cracked. Does
there's
it
the
break? No, he doesn't go for the hammer on the Diva Bomb. That's too bad.
Grab. Self-Destruct's going
So does it break there?
I don't think it broke. There's no
He just
break
dropped it.
animation. He just
That
went for the
gravity.
hammer.
on so that RTK could have got a better combination, and that shield wasn't there to protect
really
them.
weird time to
Alas,
drop
that was
it.
not the case. And now Fusions
I'm not sure if sleep works. I'm pretty sure McCree stun works. It's on my list of things to test. The full list of interactions with Diva Bomb.
ready to match.
I don't think the shield breaks. I think he just goes for the shatter. I don't know why either.
Well, there's the grab. Self-Destruct's going to...
Yeah, like Trid just came over and said a second ago, he thinks it because he was frontlining. If he turned around there, he was exposed to everything else coming in from the Hurricane
Fusions
lineup.
has hammer, right? So
Yeah.
if
So it's a bad call either way, right?
if Cloudy does turn around, then he's going to get smashed. But the idea here, is going to be force their hammer as well. Like, if you're going to lose, make them use as many ults as possible. So here's the option, right? You either, if you actually turn your shield around to try and block the Diva Bomb itself, then in order for that Diva Bomb to gain value, Fusions has to also commit the hammer. But instead of doing that, Cloudy tries to preemptively hammer, maybe trying to time it perfectly against Fusions. So instead of forcing Hurricanes to use an additional ultimate in this fight, Cloudy uses his ultimate and puts him even farther behind on ult economy in a fight that they lost. So I definitely think this is Cloudy's fuck up, as well as Davin. Davin using his bubbles really early in the Graviton. You never want to bubble directly at the start of a Graviton.
Maybe it was a panic from both of them, though. I guess
Very
what you
possible.
remember there
Maybe
when
they
you've
didn't
got-
expect this combo at this location because it was a very aggressive Graviton from Hurricane. If I was this team, I would have expected the Graviton to come out, maybe just a little bit later. Definitely not at this corner here.
And don't forget as well, Nil had just popped tires. They were entering this, so clearly they were trying to set up their own play, probably to go for their own aggressive shatter or something to try and make a play. Even
I'm
with
not
the
sure if
sound
they would. They
barrier.
definitely the attackers definitely wouldn't have want to make a play in this courtyard. They definitely want to take a fight on the point.
Why do you think they burnt Nil ultimate here then, the Junkrat ultimate on Gigantti's side?
Probably to discourage the coalescence or just nuke a tank and give them cover while they move in onto the point.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
moving
fair
in with Tire gives, like, you can make space for DPS, but you can also make space for the Rip Tire itself. And if people kind of spread out and look for the Tire, they're not really going to be able to engage on you. They're not going to go for these full combos, and it can give you positional advantage using the Rip Tire as cover. So it's kind of, mutually beneficial. The Rip Tire coming out gives you the space you need to take advantageous positioning, as well as you taking advantageous positioning allows the Rip Tire to get more value in turn. So yeah, I definitely think that was the case, and it's a very common tactic to drop Rip Tire, to just push in with a Tire instead of like a Junkrat himself.
Yeah.
It looks like he was just late on the Shatter to stop the bomb. That was significantly late to stop the bomb. That was if he was going for the bomb stop.
It's already too late, right?
Yeah, if he was going for the bomb stop, he was way too late. I think it was a mistake. We would have to talk to Cloudy to think about like why he decided to shatter there, but I definitely think it was a mistake. Can't you use the Diva Bomb to turn the Rhino away from your team so you can do damage to all enemies? Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That was the idea I think they were going for, right? But then, like you say, it was the intention of turning around to face the Diva Bomb was to force out the Shatter from the Hurricane lineup.
Yep. And Wayfast says, I don't think you should ever Tire into a Grav instead of just sending your junk in there. Yeah, I agree. But Hurricanes isn't the one dropping the Rip Tire, right? Craggy from the Hurricanes used Grav, and Nil from the team Gigantti used Rip Tire. Hey,
Yeah.
Jory, good to see you. Interesting. This is an interesting fact to look at. Let's keep going.
Going to send in as well. The hammer does hit the floor, but it doesn't matter. Happy Cool finds the 4-piece.
Was the intent... Okay,
Ends
the
up
Earth Shatter
getting
there,
the
was that not
mech of
to
RCK, and
detract the aggression coming through and then turn around and block the bomb? Because he did Earth Shatter and then try and turn back around towards the bomb. He was just a fraction of a second too late. That looked like the intent to me from what I saw anyway.
Maybe, but as much as I sometimes could criticize for overanalyzing, I think Cloudy is just overanalyzing Fusions. Fusions is just going to sit there and hold his shield because he knows that Cloudy has hammer until he turns around, and then if he turns around, Fusions is going to hammer him. There's no kind of like mental game here for the side of Fusions. Cloudy is just like hoping that Fusions playing chess instead of just punching you in the face. Like, so,
I guess it's super easy in hindsight to pause and discuss for like a full 3 or 4 minutes what's going on, but this all happens in the space of 2 seconds in game.
Yeah,
so
like there's
only so much thinking you can do,
especially in triple tank. Both Reinhardts, it's almost always best to assume that unless the Reinhardt literally just use Shatter, he probably has it. So Fusion's sitting here with Shatter, and he knows that people are in Grav, and it's so common in Grandmaster. Like, this is the easiest thing to ever do, and it's the one trick to always kill people in Masters if you're playing Reinhardt is if you get Graved, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, we gotta kill everybody in the Grav, and you just fucking counter Shatter, and you get everyone. And it's just this is amateur hour shit. Like, Fusions is not gonna fall for it. Fusion should not fall for a counter Shatter in a Graviton. He's not going to fall for it. So Cloudy, trying to go for the Shatter and then turning around, Fusions does actually get knocked down by the hammer because he dropped his shield too early after he blocked the Shatter, but I don't think so. Yeah, Cloudy has no good answer, and the answer that he came up with ends up wasting his hammer.
He's finished off with a Flame Strike. 2 ultimates used in that engagement. They still have that Shatter available to them. LH Cloudy tried to make something work there, but it was already too little, too late.
Of course, LH Cloudy, he did know that you could...
So, we're getting a replay. There's a question. Guilty Clock says, Jayne, hey, could you elaborate a little bit on the general idea of Rein Zarya versus its copy? What favors you most? You mean Rein Zarya versus Rein Zarya? Versus
Sounds
its,
like it,
mirror matchup Rein Zarya. What favors you the most in a mirror matchup? Like, the only thing that I can think of that's immediately apparent is just chaining your ultimates. So one of the great things is that Graviton can charge Hammer Down, and then a successful Hammer Down can, in turn, help charge up Zarya's Grav. As well as a really aggressive Reinhardt is just going to make sure that your Zarya is sitting basically always above 80% charge, which is increasing your DPS output out and the rate that you're charging Graviton. So just the team with the higher aggression, and you never ever, not never ever, you very rarely want to use Hammer and Graviton at the same time. Not only because both of them are CC ultimates, but because it really ruins your ult economy, just absolutely destroys it. So definitely the team that kind of manages the cycling of their tank ults a little bit better when you're playing Rein Zarya will have the advantage.
Yeah. Fusions has only just got back, by the way, just to elaborate on the Fusions. Like, we basically just said that he shattered way, way too late to try and stop the bomb. If he was going to shatter, it should have happened after it left your team's shield from going in front of... Names are even harder than words, apparently, in front of your ult. Yeah, I should have said your ult from the start. So once it went through your shield, we thought that's when he would go for the shatter, but he actually waited for it to go behind.
Yeah,
he shattered your team for the follow-up and then tried to turn around to block the bomb, but was too slow.
Yeah, we thought that he was trying to shatter the bomb as well, but it was like, watch it here. I think it's right at this moment.
Yes,
yeah, it's already past him. So the bomb's already past him.
Halt the progress.
And then he goes for hammer.
Of a bomb as it's moving with the Earth Shatter, but unfortunately it was a little bit too late, and of course because...
In what situation do you want to use Grav and Shatter together? If it's like basically if Grav didn't work out. So if for some reason, like if you had planned to use like Grav Pulse together, and your Tracer dies before she actually gets the Pulse Bomb off, one of the really cool things about Shatter is that everybody knows, maybe not everybody, most people know that after a Reinhardt hammers, there's kind of 5 rays that spread out from Reinhardt's hammer. And these rays each last for kind of 450 milliseconds. And if you stand on any one of these, during that 450 milliseconds, you get shattered. But what people also don't really realize is that the hammer, where the hammer actually strikes the ground, this circle part, this is part of the actual shatter hitbox. So if somebody is graved, like if there's the grav right here and then everyone is stuck in the grav, if Reinhardt shatters literally the center of the grav, everyone in the grav will get knocked down. So you don't have to catch people in the cone. If you catch people in the circle, it'll still knock. So even if the enemy has a Reinhardt, so if the enemy is graved and they have a whole bunch of people stuck into the grav, but then this guy's got his Reinhardt shield, you, as Reinhardt, can just walk right through his shield, hammer the center of the grav, and it will knock everybody down to CC them long enough for the rest of your team to just follow up without the use of damage ultimates. But it's a last resort. You never want to plan to use hammer grav. You would just use it as a follow-up in case, you know, in a chaotic or a devolved team fight, you needed it to actually win the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought it was a wasted slam as well, Fusions. Who's the other guest? Oh, so right now we've got Dezachu. You said it's like Pikachu.
Yeah, exactly.
European Overwatch Contenders commentator. Great guy. And then at 2 p.m. EST, we're having Elk, a support player for Fusion University, joining us for some Overwatch League map analysis stuff.
It's kind of like going to your first gig or concert, and I'm like the support act in this case. I'll be hanging around for that guy as well, because that'd be really good to see how that gets broken down.
Awesome. Cool, let's keep going.
Because he was Earth Shattering, he couldn't shield the remainder of his team. I don't know if he could have saved anyone from that due to the angles, but look at this. British Hurricane moving so far forward, they're forcing Team Gigantti to pay for every single meter they take forward. And of course, the more that they have to sort of be trepidatious and cautious about moving in, the more that British Hurricane can accrue in terms of percentage here. And now, Team Gigantti, they've got 2 support ultimates at their back. They're going to be able to stay in this fight for a long time. But Kib, he's got the burst damage. He doesn't really need to worry
here's what I was talking about last time, right?
Ready to go.
So, you saw that Team Gigantti this time, they sped in through the right side, and because Hurricanes didn't have their combo ultimates, Gigantti actually did manage to get on the right side here. Now, when you have the point... Oh, hiccups. Go away, hiccups. Now, when you have the point here, the little wooden bridge is like this here, Gigantti is going to speed into the right side here. And the way that, this is the reason that the high ground is good here, is that Hurricanes drops, and they don't do the strategy of just kind of like holding one toe on the point and forcing Gigantti to come to them. They actually very aggressively take the space from Gigantti, which is going to hold them in this location. And when you have a Junkrat, specifically the Riptire, if you can keep people in one place, it's going to be a lot more valuable here. But this is kind of exactly what I wanted to see. You know, don't go kitchen, don't go left, go right side, and try and just force the fight on point. British Hurricanes responds perfectly, drops, and you know they ain't no bitch. They're taking all of the space, not even going to give Gigantti a foothold on the point. I like it.
There it comes.
Okay, he's got that tire again.
Can
He
as
find
well.
the back line? They're all in one space. He throws it straight in and gets a triple. Yeah. The 3K for
so,
you shut it down before they even got into position, right?
Yeah. So and then the big reason that Hurricanes would have been so aggressive taking the point and funneling Gigantti back into that corner is just to give them or keep them all nice and grouped for Kib's tire. It was really well played there.
Oh dear.
You thought explosions were your ally.
That was painful to watch because this composition
If
likes
the-
to move together.
So the
with
question in
smooth
chat is, why are they pushing through main instead of going top left? If they go top left, Hurricane can rotate and hold them in there with Junkrat spam. It's not a good idea.
booster Lucio is so easy for Riptides to end like this.
Giganti's
They're on
swapping?
95%. They might just secure Nepal
Probably
here.
just because
It's
they've
crunch
given
time
up here.
for Team Gigantti. Ripper's the only one with an ultimate. The Coalescence is already
There's the
coming in,
full
but
dive,
no one
yeah.
is on the point, and it will be.
There was a
British
Hanzo
Hurricane
swap
running
there.
away with it 2-0
Interesting.
on
Not
Nepal.
that it matters,
Oh
I think.
So-
boy, just
They were
the
probably hoping to get
stagger
the
of
panic push
ults,
onto
the
the point,
ability to
but not gonna
recognize
happen,
how
right?
many ults to actually...
Now, Hurricane's looking like a very strong team to me. Like, Hurricanes have got to be just... Unless I'm crazy, they look like a top team. Where are they in the rankings?
Hurricane.
Yeah, like I say, Hurricane and Gigantti probably coming into this were considered the two top teams throughout both groups. I'd say they're both in Group A, which seeding basically really weighted towards Group A. But there are some really good teams starting to show up in Group B. Whether or not they stack up against these guys, though, different story.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I'm really so far very impressed with British Hurricanes play. We'll have to see Team Gigantti. I expect more, I suppose. A few individual errors here. Like, their compositions aren't at fault here, but they definitely just seem to be taken to town by the Hurricanes so far. Next map is Numbani. Now, what do you think? Are we going to see Tracer Sombra? Are we going to see... We're probably going to see Tracer Sombra dive, aren't we?
I really hope to, because the first, I suppose you could say high-level strat that I'd never seen before, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I actually think it was from one of your streams where you spoke about the Sombra holding left high ground on defense. You basically hack one of the divers as they come in, drop down, kill the Zenyatta at the back, and then use your translocator to get back up to the fight itself and completely detract the attackers. And that in itself was a really good defense. I've always been looking it out for it since week 1, and no team yet has really used it. I can't remember if it's in this series or another one, but someone did do something to that effect. I think it was in a game between CIS Hope and someone else last week. Problem was there was no Zenyatta because it was Pharmacy.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He had nothing to hack, and it was like, oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, and especially based on the more meta defenses that are coming out, we are seeing kind of the Tracer Sombra where they're hard flanking alley just because they know that that's where the defenders normally retreat to. So they're just kind of... What's the easiest way to explain this? So... Most defensive strategies on Numbani involve a very weak initial defense. The defenders dropping back down into alley where they can stabilize and then re-engage on the point. But what teams have more commonly been doing recently is taking Sombra and Tracer, and before the fight actually starts, they're sending them into alley over by that mini and the mega, so that when the teams try and retreat, they retreat into the waiting arms of a Tracer and a Sombra, which is a ridiculous amount of damage, plus the hack means that anything that tries to retreat from the mainline dive is going to get absolutely fucked. So... yeah, I saw some really cool variations on the Numbani defense and attack in scrims last night, actually. Unfortunately, those were private, so I can't share them. But there's some really cool stuff that I saw glimpses of last night that should be coming down the pipeline here pretty quick. I think teams are just on the end of refining them. Cheers, Fusions. Thanks for stopping by.
And then move on those thereafter.
Send Cloudy
What
to
did
asking what the
Gigantti
hell his
run here in
idea
that
was in
case
that fight earlier.
Because British Hurricane do, like I mentioned before, they are
Hey,
very
Agent.
synonymous with running this exact composition with Crusade on the Lucio, on the defense. Now, they run something like a Pharah here. You've got to be kind of careful of Kib, but there is so much elevation that you can get. But the thing is, you've got to have Davin on this Tracer. He can't quite match up to Craggy or what we've seen thus far, but he can be a mean Tracer when he can actually get his work done.
And Crusade here is going to be a huge pain to both LH, Cloudy, RCK, and Nil once they come up when he brings out that boot. That's less of a problem for a Pharah because he's just going to be staying in there and you can maintain.
So this is definitely a different composition than I'm used to seeing on both sides of the coin here. Before I get into it, Guilty Clock says, I see Ana is being used here. When do you take Ana over Mercy on first point defense? So there's a few reasons. The main reason that you'd go for Mercy is going to be damage boosting a DPS. For example, British Hurricane's composition here with Kib could be run with a Mercy. If you were running Mercy, you may want to go like a Zenyatta instead. But Ana has a few big benefits over a Mercy. And the first one is going to be much longer range heals. So Ana, using the sight lines of either the high ground if she's uncontested or alley, can pump out a lot of healing without having many counterplay options from the side of Team Gigantti. However, if divers do get directly onto Ana, she's basically fucked. Defense Matrix eats both Sleep Dart and Anti-Nade, as well as she has no kind of like regeneration at all. She's going to be relying on a character like a Lucio to actually keep the Ana alive here. So it's really, it's really preference. There's no one reason why you would have to run Ana over Mercy on these specific compositions. Mercy is a lot more continuous heals and can't be blocked by barriers or defense matrix, whereas Ana can, but Ana has the higher healing and higher utility. So it just depends on what you're actually trying to do. You wouldn't, in this situation, pick them for their ultimates. Mercy's Valkyrie is a really good tempo ult, and you can combo Nano Boost into Visor, or like for a team wipe or a tank to keep them alive. But the primary consideration for these compositions is how the healer is going to act between the usage of their ultimates. That's what's going to really matter here. Any other questions? Looks like we're having some sort of discussion about I don't know what. Okay. What do you think about is this something, these compositions meta for European contenders? You want to give us some insight?
We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff on Numbani. We've seen like quad tank hole, triple tank hole. We've seen the Sombra a couple of times. Like I say, pharmacy attack, full dive attack, triple tank attack. It's probably one of the most.
Didn't I hear there was a Reinhardt run on Numbani defense in European contenders the other day?
Yes, that was Mosaic in week 1, I want to say. Mosaic are a team going through a lot of kind of issues outside of stuff. And I could say this isn't a Blizzard broadcast. They basically had an issue where the CEO/investor wasn't paying the players. I think he owed like 20k or something ridiculous to them, and then just ran away.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah. So they've had a lot of issues in the back room as well as on the field, I suppose you could say. Main problem they faced was Christopher, who's their main tank, doesn't really play Winston very well. He's basically exclusively a Rhine player. So they ran quad tank defense into initially Junkrat Sombra, and then the Junkrat and Sombra traded out to go for Pharmacy Tracer.
I was going to say Pharmacy Tracer would have just ruined that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what rolled through it in the end. But to be fair to them, they had a Roadhog, Valatire his name was. He retired recently, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
He actually he dealt with the Farah really well. The Farah could not get anywhere near the fight because every single time she got anywhere near, hooks were just flying straight at his face.
Yeah, Valo's nuts. He retired.
Yeah, he posted about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that he's stepping down. He's done with it for now, I think he said.
Oh.
So it's a bit of a shame for him. Oh, yeah, Trid just mentioned to me as well a second ago. We've seen things like Torb defense being ran with one support. Like I know we've seen that a couple of times in Owl, I want to say. A guy called Eng for CIS Hope ran it, and it was just like, wow, they actually did a full hold with it as well. It's
Christopher's actually in chat. He didn't like your comments.
Hey, Chris. Nah, it is what it is, right? It's an opinion a lot of the time. Like it's what we've seen. Sorry, Chris. I think a couple of the guys I spoke to, they said, this guy is regarded to be a main tank on Rhine. A couple of times we've seen, to be fair to him, I did compliment his Winston on Third Point Dorado on one of the games they played. That was really good. But the team just run a lot of Rhine comps. And it's quite evident that they're playing to that because it's one of their strengths. It's what he plays mostly.
So for this composition specifically, Gigantti's running the very classic full dive. Nothing needs to be talked about there. But what do you think about the Hurricanes running the Ana Soldier in their dive defense here?
I think the Ana's nice because of the angles that you get, especially if you hold behind the column on the high ground. Lucio being picked up for the sole reason, I think, in that it's very, very good at keeping the Ana alive. If anyone goes to the dive, you boot them backwards. They fall off the high ground. You can hold it quite successfully. Or if you will need to retreat and drop off high ground back into alleyway, you've got the speed boost from the Lucio if you need to do it on double time and just pull back and try and keep safe. A lot of teams run this kind of strat where they hold that high ground bridge and then have to back off and essentially run into alleyway. A few teams did it really nicely where they back off, kind of take the initial brunt of the fight and then push straight back into point and win it immediately afterwards. I think they're going for that style of play with it and also looking for the boost most lightly onto the Soldier.
And the question in chat here from Dagiel, sorry for repeating myself, what about Lucio? It doesn't seem like an optimal pick for first point defense. Maybe just booping off enemies off high ground. It's going to be less for booping people off high ground and way more for keeping the Ana alive. Because the Ana is going to be the primary source for actually healing tanks. as well as just keeping people alive. So in much the same way how it's normally Lucio's job to keep a Zenyatta alive, like an Ana doesn't have self-regen in the way that a Zenyatta does, the way that a Mercy does, the way that a Lucio does. So unless she like nades herself, which is a huge waste of an anti-nade, if you're an Ana player, you should try and avoid anti-nading yourself as much as possible, because using that tool offensively is vastly superior. So yeah, the Lucio is primarily there going to be protecting the Ana as well as controlling the engagements, the retreats, speeding back it out to alley, re-engaging onto point. So it's not going to be about the boops or contesting high ground. It's going to be about keeping Ana alive and controlling the engagements. How do you choose between focusing tanks or focusing heals as dive? It's who's stronger in the poke phase. That's really all it is. If you're favored in the poke phase, you focus tanks. If not, then you're going to have to do a very quick dive onto either a DPS or a support. So that's the very general rule. I remember Christopher playing Winston just fine last Contenders. Was it for Envision? I don't know. I am not familiar with Christopher myself.
Constant sightlines to Kib if you are so inclined. Already Kib getting a little bit of ultimate percentage, a little bit of scouting here for remainder of Team Gigantti. We're going to be setting up, we're going to be gathering
Team Gigantti just priming on the high ground, and then they're speeding in. The boop kind of just separate them out, and both Winstons getting a ton of cleave here.
And now and straight in with the speed boost.
Oh, big boop as well. They're going to fall down.
And they are falling back here. So what's gone on at this point? Fusions is still on the high ground. Cloudy's still on the high ground. Looks like Gigantti has successfully taken positional advantage. And where in the hecker is Haffy Cool? Is Haffy Cool on point? Where the hell is Haffy?
I think he sat at the back of point here, or did he? I'm trying to remember if this is the fight where Happy essentially goes
gathering
in 1 versus 6 at the
all
very
about
back of the
intel
point.
right now and straight in with the speed boost.
He's not actually there,
Big
look.
boop as well. They're going to fall
So yeah, okay, you just saw the Rocket's bottom right corner of the screen. He was with
down to the high
Craggy
ground
on the
as
other side.
per.
Oh, there he is. Okay, I was like, what? Where is Haffy? So he comes up behind Cloudy, and now here you are seeing kind of like the 3-man backline of Bach, Kib, and was Crusade the support in the first game? Why am I thinking Crusade is? Crusade was on Nepal as well, wasn't he? Am I crazy?
No, sorry, I probably should have clarified in that. So, Funny Astro plays every control map for them, plus Hollywood, and then Crusade plays the rest.
I was like, I'm dreaming. Where did Crusade come from? Yeah, so they are still playing Lucio, but interesting. Anyway, so yeah, we are having the backline of the British Hurricane here on the back. Fusions and Happy Cool trying to control this high ground, pressuring a lot onto Cloudy here. And so far, this is actually looking pretty good onto British Hurricanes. They weathered that dive pretty well and are stabilizing. And now that we're in these kind of longer, drawn-out phase, we can get the value of Ana and Soldier starting to move things in favor of the British Hurricanes. So Gigantti with Cloudy low and in a bit of a risky position. It's not over for Gigantti yet, but this definitely favors Hurricane.
Neil is actually going to jump straight onto the point on that Genji, so now it's up to Kib and Crusade to push their way onto this point with the help of Happy Cool. Neil is going fairly low, but should be all right. Although the mech from RCK is definitely not, as Happy Cool does manage to dislodge.
Yeah, this was
They're
the well-handled
extremely
aggression.
low
I
as
think
well.
where they
Has
fall
to
back
dash
into
away to
alleyway
cover.
and then
They're
push
gonna get
back out
complete-
of the point.
Yeah, and this is like this is the
slowly.
accepted school of thought about how to play Numbani, is that you play a slow comp, you weather the initial dive, retreating into alley, and then you push back in with higher value heroes. This has been the meta on Numbani for over a month now, if not longer than that. Probably, well, I have a fickle grasp of time. It's probably like 3 months now. But yeah, this is like accepted. And this is also why we're talking about that the most recent modifications to Numbani attack is that instead of allowing them to stabilize an alley, we're planting a Sombra and a Tracer there to kind of say, hi guys, nice stabilization. Would be a shame if something were to happen to it. But so yeah, that was perfectly played from Hurricanes. Survived the dive, retreated. Lucio disengaged, kept the damn. That's unfortunate. That is much unfortunate. Isn't that the second time Kib just died, just straight up? Because he did this happened on Sanctum as well, where Kib got picked early.
No, that was nil. The other side, wasn't it?
That was nil. Right.
Yeah.
That was nil. Okay. Soldiers
Call
getting...
it 1-1.
Yeah. We'll call it 1-1. That's too bad. After such a really great defense, and that defense is going to give you ultimate advantage. Like Cloudy's at 35%, Fusions is at 70, literally double the ult charge. Half Cool's up 20%. Kibb's at 70, Craggy's at 70, Box gonna get nano real quick, way before Reaper and Massa get anything. So Hurricanes had the advantage. I'm actually surprised looking at this, the level of ult charge that the supports have. It's really good work from Reaper and Massa. But, and the other thing is that Crusade is going to get his barriers a lot slower because he is basically on protector duty, right? When you're protecting an Ana, you don't get much healing because the Ana is healing a fuck ton, and you're basically just protecting. So whatever you get from just passive chip healing, passive generation, as well as just the spam poke is all that you really have to actually build up your sound barrier here. I don't know if you noticed, but you spilled flour on your hoodie. Oh, really? Thank you. Isn't the defensive team in favor during the initial 4v6 engage when the Tracer Sombra run around the backline? Oh, you don't engage until your Tracer and Sombra are in position, right? So you don't like engage while your Tracer and Sombra are flanking. You pretty much just sit by bus, count to 10, then dive. What is the defender going to do, right? You just take your time. You've got all the time in the world on attack. Defenders. So this is kind of when we think about the differences between defenders and attackers, and there's two things that each team can control. The defenders control where a fight happens. Attackers control when a fight happens. It's very important to remember. Defenders control where, attackers control when. So, if you are trying to set up this kind of like split push, the attackers would just kind of wait, confirm that the defenders are running the style of defense that they expected. Tracer and Sombra would flank into position. The four-man crew would trigger the dive. It would just work like that. Unless defenders preemptively dive, yes, but the attackers can kind of make that not happen by they could just like sit in spawn forever. We can talk pedantics, but at the end of the day, in the same way that defenders, of course, you could come up with some sort of like pedantic situation in where the attackers could force the location of a fight. But in general, and not just in general, but the vast majority of the time, defenders control where, attackers control when. Okay. I'm assuming that Gigantti is just going to hard dive this off the pick from Kib?
Yeah, I think the same. It's kind of like, it reminds me of that one map on, I can't remember who it was between, when Raucus fell off the map with his ultimate online.
Yeah.
I remember you had a meltdown laughing fit.
Oh,
It just really reminds me of that because you've lost a member early on through no real requirement or resource expenditure for the attacking side, and it's like, well, that's our go button, right? This is where we win.
Cool. Let's see it play out.
Ending his life. A tick has already been accrued for Team Gigantti. We only need two more.
That is a very nasty pick. You don't have that bionic field, although Craggy's going to take out Ripper, but Davin instantly traced that one back with a pulse bomb onto Bokwan. They're going to be able to sit on this point. That pulse bomb is ready to unleash from Craggy. He's playing rather safe. They might just be able to, they might have to just give up another tick here. Craggy does down the pulse bomb, doesn't quite get the flick of the wrist and the stick onto LH Cloudy. Davin pays him the price as well.
Nice.
There we go.
And that will be the
There are some stagger opportunities, but it looks like Davin's the only one going for him. Okay, now Streets Phase is one of the ones where if you do kind of die within that 10-second window of them capping, then they're going to get, a third, if not half of Streets Phase entirely for free here. So, although Hurricanes regrouped really early here, so let's take a look at the ultimates. Hurricanes pretty much has Nanovisor available to them. Crusade coming up on Barrier. Fusion has Primal. Gigantti having both support ults coming online, Blade coming up, Bomb coming up, a lot of ultimates coming up here. So this is going to be an opportunity where, let's okay. So for the Hurricane, what do you think the Hurricane's game plan is?
They've got two options really to go for the big clear. If they want to go for the big jump in, try and murder everyone, they go for the boost onto fusions. I don't think they go for the boost onto fusions because they'll probably be aware that Gigantti will be close to their ultimates, the defensive ones. Obviously, the sound barrier is online. Trans is about to come up. They'll be suspecting that that's an option to have available to them. Biggest problem is if you go for the ult onto Kib, then likelihood is Gigantti with full dive is just going to jump on him and shut him out the fight either way. So maybe you're looking for Crusade to have his sound barrier. Out of those two options, I'll go with... I don't know. Hurricane, I'm going to say they go with the boost onto fusions, despite everything I said, because he's got his own ultimate, and once it expires, they can ult him. They can at least stall this fight out for a bit longer. So Nano onto the Winston with the visor to back it up. It kind of forces Gigantti's hand. They have to act in one way or another, or expend more ultimates than what Hurricane are investing.
And barrier will be reactive?
I think barrier will be more reactive than follow up for the full dive. I think it's a bit too heavy for a commit in this defense to go for an all in with all of your ultimates to make that happen. So definitely more reactive than proactive.
Cool. So chat's saying nanovisor, but you definitely wouldn't want a nanovisor right off the start because they have support ultimates, right? So if you nanovisor, you're wasting 2 ultimates and they'll counter with 1. So you're not going to get any value out of that. So what I would kind of like to see here is instead of using the nano onto fusions, fusions has primal. So you didn't list primal as one of the ultimates that Hurricane would use here. But honestly, fusions has the opportunity to deep dive pretty hard, even without nano. Like maybe you nano fusions to get in there, but then you're using a lot of like finisher potential with putting the nano onto Kib, as well as the nano has the dual purpose of not only giving him that nanovisor, but also surviving against full dive. So I definitely would save the nano for the soldier here, Kib. So I'm going to go with, instead of nano monkey, I'm going to go with primal. And I want to see a hard dive onto the supports to bait out trance. If barrier's used, that sucks. If trance used, yay, because barrier can still, like if you nanovisor, you can still do a lot more work against barrier than you can trance when you're using nanovisor. So primal into nanovisor is going to be my guess. And then I think definitely barrier is going to be reactive. Barrier is going to be reactive. Reactive. Okay, and then from the side of Gigantti, they don't have those ults, so it's basically going to be the support ults. So from the side of Gigantti, what do you think that the Gigantti's game plan is going to be?
Probably a go with the... This is where that kind of discussion comes up between the Lucio and the Zen ult, where you want to use the Lucio for burst and the Zen for sustained, right?
Yep.
So I guess in the case where you're expecting the visor to come out, you probably want to deal with the monkey first. As soon as you hear the visor come out, you probably pop... I'd love to say trans, but I think it'll be sound barrier first they bring out. And then if needed, if there's any big follow-up coming in from Hurricane, if everyone commits with the dive, then they bring out the trans immediately afterwards. So on the other side... Go on, sorry.
So barrier then trance?
Yes.
Anything else?
Looking at that, they've got the Genji. This is where I was kind of concerned about the soldier. Now you've explained your thinking. I think yours makes more sense than mine. But for example, with Nil having his blade online, either he goes for the dive into the backline to try and force the ult out of Crusade defensively rather than aggressively, and to try and deny Kib some opportunity with the visor. Self-destructs could be a really good panic button as well, but I expect it'll probably be a case of everyone playing defensive. So Nil will probably burn the blade and stay defensive alongside RCK, ready to hit that self-destruct button if it comes down to it.
So you think that... Sorry, did I misunderstand? Are you thinking that when Hurricanes dives in, Gigantti, like Nil, is going to counter dive Hurricane's supports?
It's an option he has. I kind of changed my thought mid-process. I was saying yes, he could dive in. That's why I was concerned about the visor being nanoed, is that he jumps in and tries to get onto the soldier pretty quick. It's either the soldier or Crusade. I think is either one of the twos he goes for. But then I changed my mind mid-thought and say, okay, well maybe then he stays defensively with the blade as well, just to try and cut off some of the damage. But knowing that most of it is coming from the nano visor from afar, he has to go to them. You can kind of see where I'm going. It's half-half. I'm not 100% sure where Nil will go with it, but RCK I think has got the self-destruct as a defensive zone denial thing for Hurricane.
I'm going to guess Trance comes out first. 10% really isn't that hard for Zenyatta to get. So Trance first, and then I think Barrier Blade is going to be comboed in response. So the reason why I think that is because Blade alone is probably not going to be very survivable. So having that barrier there, especially against Visor, whether it's nanoed or not, having the barrier will get the entire team able to get onto Kib. Cloudy and RCK, it'll give them the protection they need, and give them the protection that they need to kind of shut Kib down while Nil goes to work. So I'd like to see Diva Bomb saved here. I don't want to see it used. I really would prefer neither tank ult actually be used. So I think if Gigantti can do that, can pull it off without either using tank ult, then we'll be in a good case. So we've got our guesses. Let's see what actually happens.
Send Infusions to go for a really deep dive, try and force the support out of either Ripper or Master. You can go super deep CS with Primal Rage, an extra 1000 HP buffer to stop him
There's the deep dive from Fusions.
from dying, and he's going straight to a back. You can see him now. Here comes
The peel comes out from RCK. Fusions is primaling, but so far no support ultimates from the Hurricane.
Fusion's jumping straight in, activates that Primal Rage as well. Kibs are ready to unleash.
So the primal did come out, but it didn't force the support ultimate, which is bad news for Hurricane.
And Gigantti have all 6.
Yeah, this is gonna be like not getting a support ultimate out of one of them off of a deep ult. You want to be trading primal for a support ultimate, but they didn't get any value out of this.
It's a tactical visor, but they decide.
Fusion's retreating, and here we're probably gonna see. We may just see Barrier Blade come out just right now.
Against it for the time being. A wealth of ultimates on Team Gigantti's side. They're looking at an entirety of theirs, in fact. Happy Cool gets demeched straight away.
The bomb does demech, though.
Still with 5 in the bank.
Okay, so what just happened here? So the bomb came out to demech Happy Cool, and that just kind of spins everything into action here. Now, Happy Cool is demeched, yes, but has barrier. That's why he has so much health right now. Fusions out of primal now, recharging. And Crusade dropped barrier. What did Crusade drop barrier for?
Maybe to keep Happy from getting picked. Because Davin would have been swooping in there ready to drop him pretty much immediately. He got the pulse bomb already onto the mech.
Yeah.
And then he's probably looking to immediately gun down Happy before he can get back in. Like any Tracer would try and do, right?
Yeah. And RCK's out of mech. When did RCK... Oh, wait, RCK's bombing. Right, that's why he's out of mech right now. So RCK is dropping the bomb in a really good location. So it's going to require the backline of the Hurricane to kind of run away here.
Maybe that's why Crusade drops ult as well.
But it's really weird that Crusade would drop ult here, because he knows he's the only option, really, to counter Nil with his Blade, unless they, like, counter Nanovisor as he's whipping out his Blade. But even then, it's a little bit awkward. So let's watch this again. Let's try and figure out why Crusade used barrier here.
Unleash the tactical visor, but they decide against it for the time being. A wealth of ultimates on Team Gigantti's side. They're looking at an entirety of theirs, in fact. Happy Cool gets demeched straight away from that pulse one from Davin, still with 5 in the bank available.
Hurricane's actually... It was Cloudy's dive. He popped it just as Cloudy landed. Or so it seemed.
A wealth of ultimates on Team Gigantti's side. They're looking at an entirety of theirs, in fact. Happy Cool gets demeched straight away from that pulse one from Davin, still with 5 in the bank available.
Yeah, so Cloudy jumps in and primals. I don't know why that alone would force the barrier, though. And especially one of the really dangerous things about... it's one of the main reasons why you're going to be wanting to use Transcendence instead of barrier against an offensive dive, is because if Winston bubbles when he jumps in, your beat can get split. Like, if you're in the bubble and your team's outside of the bubble, they don't get it. If your supports are behind but your tanks are in front of the bubble, the tanks don't get it, right? Sound barrier is blocked by, like, Winston's bubble, Orisa shields. There's a ton of things that block the LOS of sound barrier. So, real risky there. Primal came out, and he wasn't in any risk of really dying. Like, Davin was definitely there to support Cloudy's dive. Like, Davin's right there on the screen. But I think this barrier is a mistake. I don't see any reasoning as to why he would use it here.
Panic button. Getting warmed up first round, God knows.
Yeah, I know. Cloudy didn't have bubble at that particular instance, but I just wanted to talk in general why you would not normally beat just a normal dive. You do want to use trans first, right?
Yeah, of course.
Interesting.
Although you're speaking for Hurricane side there for Crusade, they don't have a Transcendence, right?
This is true, yes, but like they're still not in immediate risk of death. And especially since Nil's Blade is constantly being threatened, using your barrier here is only going to buy you time. Like, you want to be using your barrier in a way that will actually win a team fight, not just kind of like sustain or delay an inevitable lost fight. So using barrier here, if they can't win off of the barrier itself, then it'll have been wasted. Keeping your team alive for 6 seconds, or 10 seconds longer is not value. Having your barrier actually win a fight is value. So I'm going to classify this one as a mistake.
Barry and Nano Boost not yet.
Yeah,
brought
like
out.
again, we're having these like to protect unmech'd diva, but does protecting unmech'd diva for 6-8 seconds win you a team fight? No. In fact, it will probably contribute to losing a team fight because Nil's going to get a free blade immediately afterwards. So
Out. He can't quite find the sleep dart. He's just trying to heal Kib for the time being. He's just getting
There's
beaten
Nano
around.
Boost.
There's the visor actually knocked up into the high ground by LH Cloudy, and Kib is just raining death from above. No
Nil
one can
just
really stop
feeds
him.
into it
LH
for no
Cloudy
reason.
forced to disengage here. They still have the ultimate
and I
economy
still think
advantage, but
Gigantti
to
has the
support-
advantage here, despite Hurricanes using just a fuck ton of ultimates. Like, there was no real reason for Nil to feed into that. That was Nil's mistake, jumping into the nanovisor. So this should have gone even worse than it already did for the Hurricanes, despite the amount of ults that they used. They used 4 huge value ultimates, and they lost the team fight. Okay, so what do you think? Like, Masa drops the barrier just to, push them in here and prevent Hurricanes from actually regrouping. Do you think there's anything that Hurricanes can actually do?
Well, they've just had that barrier come out and the blade come through as well, and they've got nothing on their own side. So, in the words of Trid, they're just going to have to bend over and take the lesson here, I think. There's not really much they can do. When you're being charged at with all these shields and the blade, well, you're fucked, to put it shortly.
You're absolutely fucked. So
you're relying on a sleep from Bocket. It's the one, apparently, I think it's Swedish, it actually means Bocket. I think he's relying almost exclusively, or they're relying on him to get a sleep or some other kind of magic that's going to deny Nil. But there really isn't much else that you can do. I think they're just going to get run over here.
Now, before we get into it too much, I just want to talk about one thing. Right now, we're spectating Craggy, and I've got a question for you about Craggy. Is he, is he a good tracer, or is he the best
Very, very
tracer?
good.
Like, which one is he? Is there anyone who is in contenders in Overwatch League? Is there anyone who's better than Craggy?
It's such a hard debate to have because, we've always said earlier on, solo queue versus competitive is a completely different world altogether. This guy consistently is hitting rank 1 with different heroes. He's a very, very proficient player. This game was the big Davin versus Craggy matchup that we painted on the desk as saying this is the time to see who really is the #1 tracer. Of course, not forgetting guys like Shax as well. I wouldn't say he was particularly standout running over Gigantti, but then equally these two teams are both very good, so it's going to be very hard for any one player to really run away with the game, I thought.
So I'm not sure if you did notice, but Craggy did drop the 500 viewer host. So thank you so much, Craggy. Hope you had a great stream. Welcome, you fucking sellout. So yeah, welcome to the viewers who are coming over from Craggy's stream. Hope you enjoyed his stream. Welcome to.
I clearly took a really bad time to essentially turn around and go, no, Craggy probably isn't the best. Everyone's arriving from Craggy's stream.
But yeah, for those of you who are just joining us from Craggy's stream, welcome. I am an Overwatch coach, and I do a lot of educational content on the stream. And today we're looking at the match between British Hurricane and Team Gigantti, of which Craggy, if you did not know, plays on the British Hurricane. And with me is the Overwatch Contenders caster from Europe, Dezachu. So Dezachu, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to the new viewers from Craggy?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the guys who's been covering Craggy's games for the last 4 weeks here in EU Contenders. This is the big standout match to me between Gigantti and Hurricane as the pinnacle game that we were going to see in all the contenders. So it was a good chance to come on and talk about it. Very quick history, been casting for about 3.5 years. Overwatch, done a few events over the last couple of years, probably about 5 or 6 events, I think. And then Contenders has been where myself and a bunch of other guys from the UK, including Sam, who's from South Africa, have all been pulled in to come and do Contenders. And here we are.
Perfect. And the question's already in chat. Do you think Craggy could be picked up by an Overwatch League team? Absolutely. I definitely think he's I don't think anyone in their right mind would say that Craggy is not either at the OWL level or has the potential to be Overwatch League level.
There's a few really good players overall, I think, in EU Contenders. I mean, you saw earlier on we were talking about the whole Craggy versus Davin on Zarya thing. From what we saw, I think we all agreed that Davin looked like a stronger Zarya, although over the space of the series, you do see Craggy kind of start to outpace Davin a bit on the Tracer. It's not so evident in this map, but as the maps go by, you do see more of it.
Interesting. And, especially when we're looking at, next season, we're looking at 16 teams, so we're looking at 4 brand new Overwatch League teams, unless I'm remembering wrong. But with 4 new teams coming out to make it 16, and the overall goal of the league to have 28 teams worldwide eventually, honestly, it's just a matter of time until Craggy gets picked up. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The man has the talent for it. I'm cheering for him, absolutely. Hey, Gazorpazorp, good to see you. Good to see you. But anyway, here, British Hurricanes, they're just going to get punished for their mistakes, of which Craggy was one of the two who did not make a mistake. I'm just kidding. I'm going to stop selling out now.
Any chance you get now.
Yeah, perfect.
She opens up with the blade, he finds his way to the back line, slashing as he must, but he doesn't actually get anybody. A little bit of damage
So
onto
they
the
didn't
Diva
actually
mech,
get as much
but I can only
return off
assume
that as I thought they would. I thought they'd push a lot harder than that and probably net at least 3, 4, 5 kills. And yeah, they end up getting there with that, but they get pushed back.
Yeah, I am surprised they're getting pushed back, that they didn't end up... Like, I don't think it's going to be enough.
No.
But I am surprised that it even it looked sketchy even remotely, right? So, like, they could have used... And like honestly, anytime you see this sort of situation where you're like, "Oh wow, they almost didn't get it," like this is really the ideal situation. You know, if you had a Genji in that example with Blade, and you have like 3 people who are all really weak, and you kind of have 3 people who are weak, if you pull out your Blade, you can very cleanly win that team fight. But anytime you very cleanly win a team fight, it's usually an indication that you over-ulted, right? So if you can win without the ultimate, then it's a lot better. So just barely narrowly, like just barely winning, just narrowly, you know, squeaking out the teamfight victory is a lot better than like comboing 6 ultimates at the same time and winning one singular team fight right away, super clean team wipe. Because then you're losing ult economy, and the enemy team probably didn't even bother counter ulting, and then the next fight and the fight after that and the fight after that are probably not going to be in your favor. Zen now instead of Ana. Why at this part? Especially on the attack here. Oh, no, we're the defenders here. So using the Zenyatta instead of the Ana, it gives you double defensive support ults, as well as Ana is just a lot more diveable, and there's not very many positions where she can actually get good value. On the left side with the Mini, by the little hallway connector, is probably the best place for her to be, but that position for Ana has been... It's so common that attacking teams usually have set plays built around taking out an Ana at mini. So the combination of people being prepared for you running an Ana at mini, you not having a second defensive support ult on Nimbani third, where you are really wanting to, you know, hold on to this point here, because giving up first, giving up second, not really the biggest of deals, especially when we're getting to the end of Nimbani third, where we're getting into almost verging on like a 2 CP situation where the spawner advantage is so very heavily in favor of the defenders. Having that second support ult can really allow you to just hold on when a fight might otherwise be turned against you. Just stabilizing for those couple seconds so that you can start getting those respawners coming out and rejoining the fight. Even though Defran doesn't want to play pro, do you think he is the world's #1 soldier aim? You know, I don't think people give Defran enough credit for how smart he is. Like, the thing about Defran, and I don't remember who said it, but Defran's aim is godlike, first of all. He wouldn't be rank 1, 2, and 4, or whatever the hell. Like, all of his accounts are like top 5. Are you kidding me? So, you can't get there with aim. If you literally installed an aimbot onto somebody who's in Plat or Diamond right now and said, go for rank 1, buddy, they couldn't do that. Like, Defran is doing things that even people with literal aimbots cannot do. And that's because he's a smart motherfucker, right? Not only does he have good aim, but he plays in a way that the duels that he gets into are dictated by who has the better aim. And fucking, spoiler alert, it's Defran, you died. Like, GG. So, people, yes, Defran has good aim, but people really, you know, are sleeping on how smart of a player Defran really, truly is. And I don't know why. Like, he's been streaming for so long, and some of those clips, like How to Dive 101, they're just absolute glimpses of brilliance from that man. So, yeah, AKM's a pretty good soldier. Any comments on Defran, Dezachu?
I'll be completely honest, don't know enough to comment.
Fair enough. Let's keep going.
That 70% charge towards the Nanoboost, and himself and Kib are going to be at the back. They're going to be taking advantage of his long sight lines, staying rather safe. However, it's going to be Fusions and Hafikal moving forward with Craggy. They want to try and keep this contested as early as possible, so they've got as much room to play with as they can have.
Look how aggressive Craggy's being, by the way. He's so low.
Now, this is a little bit interesting to me. I paused it at the exact wrong moment, of course. Is this corner here. So, what do you think about British Hurricanes' defense? Just we're going to start tossing it over to you more. What do you think about British Hurricanes' defense based on this screen right here?
I think it's very deep. Like, they're literally relying on either winning the one fight when it comes back to them around the corner, and they don't want to try and hold this corner, which is kind of weird because most teams that we've seen play this corner and they try and hold it as like astutely as they can.
Yeah, it's very, very common for this corner to be held. Very common.
Yeah, like I always argue the point of like the reason why sometimes you see teams go for full holds on things like first point Dorado as soon as you walk out of spawn gate on the top of the two roofs is purely because you can lose that fight and you still get to reinforce in time before the attackers get to the stage where you'd want to normally hold. So there's no real punishment for it.
Absolutely.
I think the reason why you don't want to see them holding under this bridgeway here, though, is they're just so worried about that. Maybe they're thinking, well, they've just burnt ults, for example. We don't know what else they've got in store, and rightly so, they've got 3. Maybe they're trying to limit the options for Davin to go for a flank because he can't really get anywhere behind them because that's the spawn room, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's a few reasons for it, I think, but ultimately it's just trying to be more cautious than over-aggressive.
Yeah, the big thing that I have against what the Hurricanes is doing, like the Hurricanes are just jerking themselves over, like just around this corner here, right? But it looks like they're going to be holding at this corner right here. At this corner right here. But the problem is there's a very large list of reasons why holding at this corner is actually really bad. And the first and foremost is that Team Gigantti, excuse me, with Reaper, if you get your Zenyatta kind of back here, he can rotate it and have these really nice sight lines to actually contribute to the fight here. So you can, if we're looking at like a top-down view of it, if we have this corner here and this corner here, then Reaper has this sightline through both of the corners, and he can get a lot of value from this location. Or did I probably drew that in a way that wasn't very helpful for stream. So if we have these two corners like this, if you can get a Zen in a position that fires across this sightline, it's very strong for a Zenyatta. So if you hold, again, at this corner, Zenyatta gets a lot of value. But if the British Hurricane, instead of holding at that corner, hold at this corner, then the Zenyatta only really has 2 options. He can hold back here by crosswalk, and then he can contribute to this sort of line of sight. But then the actual Hurricanes themselves can just retreat behind this wall and kind of zone themselves, or just, put themselves out of line of sight of the Discords. Alternatively, Reaper and the Lucio, who I can't remember the name of, can rotate into the Mega Room here and possess this sight line. But then that gives this corner here that they can actually zone them out of. So if they actually hold at this location, they can control the sight lines of the Zen and the utility of the actual Discord itself. Whereas their backline is free to rotate to whatever actual angle they want on the attackers. The second reason why you wouldn't actually be wanting to hold this corner instead of this corner is that if you hold this corner and lose, the payload is going to slowly creep around the corner as it approaches the final destination, and you're going to have a lot of time in order to recontest. However, if you let them push to this location and then lose, then they're going to be pushing it all the way into the final cap, and you're going to be staggering on to try and regain control of the payload. So even if you're going to lose a fight, if you force the fight to happen here and you force the enemy team to either use ultimates, or during this fight, even if you lose it, you gain ultimates, you'll be able to recontest with time before they push it into the final destination and actually have a second wind or a second chance at preventing this final cap. But if this fight does end up at this corner and Team Gigantti wins it, they're going to be in risk of taking Alden Bonnie. Should Davin be trying to force barrier or pick Zen? Probably not. You want to be taking team fights at this point in stage, especially against a Lucio Zen soldier. That is super risky for Davin to try and go against.
I think especially when there's only really 2 angles, which one is the payload way and the other way is off to the left-hand side. Like, at least one member of that 6-man defense, or 5-man in this case, because Craggy's right here, they'll be watching that side angle, expecting this from Davin, which is probably why he's just staying for the team fight and saying, absolutely, it's not worth getting picked off. It's a long spawn walk. Let's just play it sensibly. Yeah,
if Hurricane is going to let Gigantti get a fuck ton of distance, why interrupt an opponent making a mistake, right? Who is the better Lucio between Crusade and Funny Astro? So far, Funny Astro. When do you leave your job to do this full time? 23 days.
Look how aggressive Craggy's being, by the way.
Craggy's
He's
recall is
so low as
burned.
well. That was extremely
Bombs
close.
out,
Trying to put out a
misses.
pulse bomb.
Bomb
Gets
comes
some
out,
AoE
though.
damage,
It's
but not much
bubbled.
else. RCK actually forced into this tight corridor to activate the self-destruct.
So look at his payload.
Boston
During this
actually does
entire time, the payload has already moved up to this corner here. Bach does kill Davin, which is going to be like that's what Hurricanes needed. They needed some sort of pick to give them the advantage. Because if this pick had been the other way around, like instead of Bach killing Davin, this was like Reaper killing Craggy, this probably would have been the end of this defense, and Gigantti would have just steamrolled all the way into that final cap here.
to find Davin in the somewhere middle of all of the chaos. They are just pushing forward, sitting on the cart, so again, it is completely contested, so no distance can be acquired here by Team Gigantti. They're happy to just disengage for the time being. Kib has got that tactical visor. They have that sound barrier available to them as well.
It was off screen. I don't know what Davin
The
did.
sound barrier is really close for Gigantti.
He
British
with the
Hurricane
portal, I
making
think.
great use of
Got
the
the ult
distance
charge,
available
didn't
to
kill
them
anyone
there.
with it except
Team
die.
Gigantti, they managed to throw in 3 ults but gained nothing from it. And now it's always for Cart being...
Okay, so Kib is dropping the tactical visor. Is there anything really Gigantti does here but just retreat? I don't think so.
Right.
They either
Either
take...
go full dive and try and kill him into 2 ultimates, or
Yeah,
you
they're
just,
already
just
taking quite a bit of chip damage. I'd probably just speed out with Masa. Just be like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
How committed are they though?
There
There's
we
someone
go.
to the left
Kib
here who's been
opening up
hard
the
committed to the
tactical visor,
fight.
making sure everybody
Nah,
runs in
just
that
gonna chase him away.
very short
Who
corridor,
popped Primal?
Pace
Fusion's popped
with his
Primal.
life and everybody
Wow,
else
that's
just gonna
big.
get cleaned up
That's
by
big commit,
Fusion.
but it
Just
works. They
bang
get the full
them
team
around
wipe.
ping
Like, they got the
pong
team
balls.
wipe, but they were going to get the team wipe regardless, right?
Yeah.
The
Well,
the
team wipe
visor
was
was
one
going
at
to
that
force
point.
the
You-
retreat. Not everyone was going to get
Yeah.
out. Their idea was just to limit how much ult charge the rest of the... Because, like, it's 100% fine if the visor is what kills you, because that doesn't contribute to the enemy team's ult economy. In fact, if you die to the visor, that's ult economy in your favor. So the idea here is you retreat in a way that Kib is the only one getting ult charge here. Because if Kib picks up 2 and the rest of the team kills the 4 that he didn't get, those 4 people who died to his team contribute to the rest of his team's ult economy here. But Fusion puts them deeper in the hole by popping his Primal when he probably didn't need to. Even if he was going to die, he probably should have just died and held on to Primal. That being said, ult economy not really a big deal for a team that has double support ultimates online. Yeah? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Cool. Gigantti here coming up on Barrier, their own Primal, and Blade. I think they're going to have to go for a few eco pushes before they get anything done here. With double support ultimates, pretty suicidal hard dives in order to force Crusade and Bach to pop is going to be necessary before they can actually get a finished push. Unless you see some sort of crazy strategy.
No, I agree. It's exactly what you were saying there. Get some chip, at least get some poke down. Maybe try and sit and there's the dive is kind of there for Hurricane, but it's the kind of hybrid with Kib on the Soldier rather than something like the Genji. So for Gigantti, they can play not fully safe, but they have that. We saw them try and run away with Massar before, and they got rolled over. But then, of course, that was under the ult from Fusion and Kib. So a bit of chip damage, get some ults online, and then try and force out those defensive ults from Hurricane.
Okay, let's see what they do.
He's a champion at that, and British Hurricane end up holding for the time being, and they still have 2. Although, actually saying that, 3 ults to work with as Transcendence does appear.
Winston, champion of both peanut butter and ping pong. Little did I know. Fusion's batting
Oh,
everyone
man.
around and
Funny
showing who
casters.
the true wrestling lord is.
So we're just expecting eco pushes here, right? We're going to look for hard dives onto supports, and Gigantti's win condition.
There we go.
They're committing
Okay.
with Barrier.
So that's actually key because they force out both defensive ultimates. They actually start.
Wow, Hurricane's fucked up.
Both support ults now
And
down,
Nil didn't even pull
self-destruct.
Blade.
Wow, Hurricane's
Hurricanes just popped everything. And Nil still has Blade. But they still win the fight. But this is big because they've got Pulse Bomb, they've got Transcendence, and they've got Blade to pull in the next fight, as well as self-destructs, and Hurricane just burnt both defensive ultimates.
That's so bad from Hurricanes. Holy smokes. The only thing that they're going to have for this next fight is Kib, and they've got Transblade. Holy, they're flanking around for this. This is coming in. You're fucked, boys. Get dunked on. Holy smokes. That was so bad from the Hurricanes. Pulse Bomb does, or no, Kib's rocket takes out Nil, but, and that dive was a lot more poorly executed than I would have expected. That was definitely the opportunity that they had to close out this map here. But Craggy especially, just pumping out the damage here is preventing the Team Gigantti from getting a very clean push. So
it's one thing you can kind of commend Hurricane for is every time Nil goes in with Blade, I think we saw it on Nepal a couple of times as well. They just always turn all focus onto him. So even though you're relying on that transcendence
say that again?
or
I missed-
sound barrier.
I missed the
That's
first
right.
part.
It's like I was saying, the one thing you can really commend Hurricane for is constantly bringing Nil down every time he pops out the blade. Even though they've got the transcendence in the barrier, the focus onto him he just drops so quick.
Yeah,
He had
absolutely.
about 3 or 4 seconds there where he got into a good position thanks to Cloudy. But after that, Hurricane were like, right, first things first, before we start panicking, get rid of Nil, then we can sort the rest out.
Yeah, and like they did an absolutely great job with that. When Nil went to use his blade, Cloudy kind of jumped on that mini, you know, the same one we talked about where the Ana normally holds. This kind of like set play into attacking defenders at this mini is practiced over and over and over again for third point defense. And we saw it pulled off quickly. You know, Cloudy jumped right in, and then when Nil pulled his blade, he pulled the blade on the left side of the mini to slice at Crusade and then dash through. And then Reaper did use the Transcendence in order to actually support this blade. However, when Nil used the dash to go through the connector on over towards KYB, no, it's not KYB, it's Kib, onto Kib, he does eat the Helix Rocket and actually drop because he's now on the other side of the barrier and Reaper didn't follow. So, you know, really like a good set play itself. It just kind of went a little bit... went a little bit sideways with Nil dashing through, getting separated from Reaper, who was trancing, and then Craggy and Kib just pumping out the damage in order to stabilize the team. Nuki, I see you. Hi, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. But
Nuki's in.
Yeah, they lost that fight because they didn't pull it off. Like they had a really good initiation. Nil gets separated from Reaper. Kib with like the 900 IQ helix right into Nil to finish him off, and then Craggy and Kib just pumped out the damage in order to restabilize here. But yeah, the barrier or the Transblade did not get nearly as much value as one would have expected. Should this be a dry push by Gigantti? Yeah. Dezachu and myself both thought that it should have been a dry push. Absolutely.
In Crusade, they both use the rolls at the same time, and now they're both moving up to them as well, but they need to stagger them now. They're looking at a 1 minute 30 time back from Team Gigantti. That's 2 good pushes that can come through. RCK has the self-destruct, but he's not going to want to put it in on his own. Craggy's just going to be skirmishing around here. He's got his eyes on the tanks, but in comes the self-destruct.
Self-destruct doesn't quite pick up.
So self-destruct and barrier coming out, and whose self-destruct was it? It was RCK's, right?
RCK.
Yes. So Kib with the counter visor, like especially counter visoring bomb is really good because you can get the get the tac visor to try and kill them before they remech, as well as if they stand still, you can get that real juicy helix as they try and remech here. So it wasn't, of course, the spectator cam wasn't on Kib, so we don't know if that was his intention. But either way, with the Diva, like even if you're not going for the Diva, with the Diva bombing, as long as Kib is in a location where the bomb can't really threaten him, they have like the primary tool that they have to negate visor, the defense matrix is gone. So Kib basically gets a free visor out of this. So I'm not sure why Kib decided to go for why RCK decided to go for more of a offensive Diva bomb instead of saving it for more of a remech situation, especially when you're fighting in a on a point like Nimbani 3rd. Again, we're talking about the spawn differential between the attackers and defenders on Nimbani 3rd is so massive that you basically have to treat it like a 2CP map. And in those sort of situations, have like the Diva having the utility to remech or get like a second life or a second win is extremely valuable. So unless you're going for like straight up team wipes with this Diva bomb, it's just not going to get enough value to matter, and it's certainly not enough value compared to the utility of remeching into a fight, remeching during a fight, which will reduce the pressure or the importance on continuous healings onto one of the targets that are going to be taking the most amount of aggression from the attackers or the defenders who are re-engaging. So I definitely am questioning what caused RCK to drop the bomb. Has it exploded yet?
Nobody just yet, and Kib
I
finds
think
his way
it
to
went
the
off and
back.
didn't kill anyone.
Yeah, so the fuck, right? Like, on other points, sure, but on Nimbani 3rd attack, why are you wasting bombs like this?
Ripper and Meza pay the price. Nil is going to go down as well.
Thanks,
Helix
Throwing.
Rockets,
Appreciate it.
they're still dancing around the car. A minute left, however, but only 2 ultimates actually used in that fight. Kib and Fusion's pop theirs, but Bokken and Crusade still have the defensive ults.
Oh, they are very happy boys, right?
Yeah, so Gigantti has honestly fucked themselves pretty hard here. like Hurricane has been significant, like, has been the better team throughout. I don't know. Maybe you've got a different opinion, but in my opinion, especially on Nepal, the Hurricanes have been consistently the stronger team between Gigantti and Hurricanes, and Gigantti definitely had better luck on second, but even the luck. Not really the luck, but the success that they had on Streets phase was due to an uncharacteristically large number of mistakes from the side of the Hurricanes. Initially, Fusion's Primal not actually forcing out a support ultimate, Crusade wasting Barrier, allowing Nil to hold on to his blade for whatever he needed, and then Gigantti just used the Barrier to kind of sustain them long enough to get a full cap. So far, Hurricanes definitely the stronger team. Your thoughts on, is it more Hurricanes is better, or is Gigantti just making mistakes? What do you think's going on here?
I mean, it kind of harks back to advice I've always given to League of Legends players when they're trying to climb, and I always say, you don't need to be the one making the big plays, just let the enemy make more mistakes, and you capitalize on their mistakes alone.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what's happening in this game. Like, Gigantti are making mistakes, and Hurricane aren't doing anything flashy or trying to be too smart and pull off big plays. They're just saying, okay, they fucked up here, let's react by doing X, Y, Z and win. And the next fight comes around, okay, they just did Y wrong, let's go and do this in response. That's what makes it quite interesting. Like, there's a lot of games you can watch, and the best games that you come across is when neither team is making mistakes and the other side is forced to be really creative to win. These ones I find interesting, though, because it really shows the team's kind of smarts behind the players themselves, the strategy they've come into it and employed, and the research they've done on each other, because they can identify where those weaknesses were. Like on the Nepal, we saw RCK kind of lagging behind in dives when Cloudy would commit.
Absolutely.
That was the big kind of exploit point for Hurricane here. And in this game, like you say, there's just been a number of mistakes being made by both sides, which has enabled Gigantti to get to the third point, but they can't quite finish because Hurricane have now tightened things up and it's Gigantti making the mistakes instead.
Absolutely. Hey, if you had said that on a desk, I would have just been sitting in my chair nodding along the entire time. Awesome. Not even the slightest bit of disagreement.
Right now, Jaws, they have 2 ultimates remaining for defensive purposes, and the Transcendence and the Soundbar, if they can layer these correctly, rather than use them both at the same time.
Probably
British Hurricanes to take Team Gigantti.
Probably one fight into like desperation staggers if this attack doesn't work out. And with both support ultimates online from the Hurricanes, do you see any way this works out for Gigantti at all?
They're almost trying to rely on Hurricane making a mistake, which is never a good thing, is relying on the other team to make mistakes to win. But that's the situation they force themselves into, because otherwise, if they had a well-placed bomb from RCK in this fight, that could change a lot of things with the ultimates coming out of Hurricane side. And as long as Hurricane don't fuck up and double stack their support ults again, there's realistically no way they should lose this as long as they play it to the book.
Perfect. Let's see it play out.
Running on empty. They've only got Master just about coming up to the Sandbar. He needs to turn up the volume. He needs to give everyone a little bit of tinnitus on the side of the Hurricane.
Self-destruct launches in. Bokkun already claims a life. Ripper is going to go down. Craggy finds him with that sound barrier, just executing people in the back line. Perfect use, and they've still got the Transcendence.
They finished
as well.
that after actually so quickly.
Look at this stagger on RCK.
Yeah, they finished that fight so quickly. They actually are going to give Gigantti a second chance at attacking with a full regroup.
Yeah.
So some point,
Happy's all kind of went through the middle and did nothing. In
yeah,
the line,
again with the offensive devals, right? We're not seeing them getting value, especially when the enemy Winston still had his bubble up. No, I got that wrong. But yes, it wasn't due to the bubble that it was blocked. It just didn't get any value.
Well, the path to victory is clear, but they need to get a move on, Jaws.
They're on the car right now. That pulse bomb finds one of the mechs, but it doesn't really matter. It's healed up instantly. Kid finds Davin already. He's already
Blade's
dead.
available. Free blade after
trans.
trans.
He was going to Primal Rage as well. This is Neil's only chance to get him on the back line. He's instantly discarded. He ends up killing Bokkun, but he doesn't
Again, they deal with Nil, but he does get
Crusade
both
ends up
support. That's
finding
the
the
big
kill
one.
with just a simple punch. Craggy.
Sorry, say that again. You were a bit quiet.
No, I was saying it's both supports have gone down against the Blade.
Yep.
Which you would think would set Gigantti up to win, but equally the counter die from Hurricane is just too much.
And we haven't actually covered this today, but in short fights, when we're looking at fights that are short in duration, it's usually the team that has the better plan. Maybe not the better set play, but the better shot calling or the better decision making on who's going to use what ult where and under what timing. However, during long, extended, drawn-out team fights, it's almost always the team that has the higher mechanical skill that is going to win. And every single fight that we see get drawn out past the initial engagement and, result of the ultimates being used is going in favor of the Hurricanes, in no small part to Craggy. And I'm not saying that one because of that Craggy's hosting. Like, every single fight that goes past the initiation, and if the ultimates that were used are committed by both teams has not resolved the fight, Craggy and Kib are just severely outvaluing Nil and Davin. Absolutely. Time and time again.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because we speak about Davin a lot as being one of these big hotshot tracers, but Nil's the one going in with Blade, being focused down before he gets too much return from the Blade.
Yep.
And then it's just Davin left. And Davin's impact after that point isn't really noticed in comparison to Kib and Craggy, like you said.
Absolutely. I hope they run this comp on attack. Is Happy Cool not using correctly this map, or is there a next level to it and perhaps trying to force specific positioning? Like, if you do manage to get like a cheeky kill off Diva Bomb, that kills the push entirely, right? So he's just flipping a coin and taking a risk. It's high risk, high reward, low risk, low reward. There's not like a mistake. It's just a decision. It's a play style. Okay, let's pause 5 seconds in and see what either team are running. We're seeing quad tank attack Nimbani.
Oh, here we go. This is where the Hurricane begins. They just run quad tank for quite a while after this.
Really?
Yeah, it's really bizarre, but you'll see it as it unfolds, right? I think it's just you don't expect it.
Well,
Davin is likely expecting dive to come through because he's picked
well,
up
absolutely,
Sombra,
yeah.
Just don't expect it at all, and they get rolled.
Well, spoiler alert, but yeah, like very like a team with the only vertical contest in this composition is of course going to be Happy Cool on the Diva, and oh my god, both teams are playing Reinhardt on Nimbani A. What year is this?
It's what region is this?
What year is this? But what?
Actually, I can't remember. I can't fully remember. I think they don't win the first fight or something. You'll see as it unfolds. I don't think it's a flat wipers and they just roll this first fight clear out. It's more as the series rolls on, you begin to see quad tank becoming more prevalent.
But okay, but I can understand quad tank on things like King's Row A. But Nimbani A, the fight around Nimbani A is all about that high ground. It's all about that high ground. It absolutely is. Controlling that high ground, taking that high ground, using it to push back in and stabilize. Because the idea of Nimbani A is basically if they go onto the point, they have no cover and can't survive against just a continuous assault from the high ground. Like if you have a soldier up there, if you have a Pharah, like if Gigantti was running a Pharah on defense here, this would be absolutely disastrous for the Hurricanes. Absolutely disastrous. But instead, what the hell is... Okay, so what the hell is this just bastardization of a defense comp from Gigantti? Can you walk me through what Gigantti's actually running here and why?
I'm honestly not sure because you're not looking to protect the Genji or the Sombra on bridge, but you're taking the Rhine, Diva, Moira, and probably the Lucio all to just sit together anyway. So it's almost like a weird double flanker setup, but what are you flanking realistically?
What are you flanking
weird.
and what are you shielding? And like Sombra has lower damage than Tracer, but higher utility. But Genji himself is also lower damage, at least lower continuous damage, and higher burst damage with his combos. But without making...
The only thing I can imagine...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only thing I imagine is they're looking to hold the point itself as 4, and then have potentially Davin and Nil set off on high ground on either side, and they can just collapse as and when they need to onto the back line.
But even then, like a Genji's really not the greatest flanker you want, right? Because if he uses his Swift Strike, or if a Winston gets on top of him without using Leap, that Winston can chase that dude until the cows come home. Like, Genji is not the strongest flanker. He's a great diver. He's a great assassin, in the tactician playstyle, but like solo flanker to the point where you're like living in the backline to the same extent that a Sombra and a Tracer can, no, it does not work nearly as well. And Reinhardt, we're going to have to let this play out because honestly, I don't know what Gigantti is thinking. I've never seen this composition before, let alone on Nimbani A. It is not immediately apparent to me why or what the strategy is. And if you're saying that Hurricane gets rolled, well, well, maybe we'll never see what they actually intended to do. Like, it's kind of going to be like the Dallas Fuel May Bastion strat on King's Row. You know, if there was some sort of crazy plan, then we never got to see it in action because Rascal got clicked in the face by a Widowmaker, right? I think it was Logix who shot Rascal's May in the face before they could pull out their really cheeky strat and they had to swap off. But fuck it. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Who are the great flankers then? There's really only Tracer.
Felix Cloudy goes down to Brawl. They're ready to give him a sucker punch.
This quad tank is also deadly. Seems pretty.
Yeah,
There's an explicit moment here where Gigantti see this comp and just go, ah, shit.
Oh, absolutely. There has to be. There absolutely has to be.
Hurricane have been working on their quad tank a fair bit. I think it's the first time we're actually seeing this. Triple tank is normally their jam. Straight away, LH Cuddy straight in the front. You see how quick he is as well on the right? Just get amped up. He's straight in there. He doesn't care. Neil's going to find it.
Let's go back again. Where were Gigantti initially holding?
Hurricane have been working on
high ground
working
above
on
these
their quad
guys now. I
tank a
think
fair
they're
bit.
pushing.
I think it's the first time we're actually seeing this. Triple tank is normally.
And then they all drop. Yeah.
But why?
What have you got to really detract them pushing through that doorway, even if they do come for high ground?
Like, yeah, like first of all, you're trying to play a slow comp, but they're playing an even slower comp. Like, and by slow comp, I don't mean, you know, literally slow as in like Lucio speed boost. I mean that like they have more sustain, they have more healing, they have more health pool, they have more damage. So they just like to take things slow because if the fight gets, you know, prolonged over a longer duration, they're just going to slowly outvalue the enemy team regardless of skill.
Mm-hmm.
So Gigantti, like they're not even trying to play slow. Like they've got a lot of tank and a lot of heal, but their damage is just so abysmal. I don't understand. I don't get it. I really wish I'd been a fly on the wall during scrims to hear the logic behind this composition. Chat, do you have any idea? Chat, I'm just going to open this up to chat because I'm honestly at a loss. It's not often that I am completely confused as to what the strategy is here. And, you know, Dez has offered his suggestions, but I'm not quite satisfied yet. Do you guys... What is the 900 IQ strat behind what Gigantti is doing here? Expecting the high tank? I don't know what that means.
I'm going to see if Davin's online. I'll ask him if he's around.
Yeah, that'd be
I
awesome.
don't think he will
Like,
be,
well, yeah.
but
While
I'll
I'm
see.
talking to chat, if you can find somebody to Gigantti to explain this, that'd be awesome. They were all solo queuing. Well, that's not really an answer. Maybe Uncloudy just felt like playing Ryan instead of Winston. Yeah, that's not really an answer either. EMP Blade and EMP Coalescence, I think. Yeah, like you can talk about ultimate combos, but in order to actually get to a point where you use ultimates to win a fight, you have to win the first fight. And if your composition relies on ultimates to win, and can't take up a straight up fight, 9 times out of 10, it's going to lose the first fight. And especially when you're talking about hybrid points or something like that, that's not a good strategy to roll with. They attempted to hack one of the tanks and just jump their team. Yeah, but like, even like hacking a tank itself, like if it's a dive and they hack the tank, then they don't really have the damage to follow up on that. Like if you had, you know, the Somber Tracer, the Somber Soldier, and if you were going to be doing a tank burn composition, which, you know, the Somber would indicate that you're trying to fuck with the abilities of some sort of opponent. And tanks would be a good, you know, a good candidate for that. But if you wanted to do that, you'd want a Zenyatta, and you'd want some higher damage than Genji. So, like, we don't even have... And if this was a composition that was relying on charging ultimates, you definitely want some sort of damage boost. Like, it's very common on Gibraltar, for example, to damage boost a Genji so that you get Blade before the opponent gets support ultimates. That's a very common strategy. But without a Mercy, without... a high damage hero, and without any sort of Discord, I don't see the tank burning being a thing. I don't see tank burning being a thing that is what they're going for here. Maybe they were better. Maybe they were betting on no quad. This comp still fucking just immediately loses to dive as well. Right? Like even Gigantti, like running if Hurricane ran a Pharah, what the fuck is Gigantti gonna do against a Pharah but slowly die?
I guess you kind of rely... what we've seen a couple of teams rely very much so on the high ground to be the aid for Sombra to essentially be anti-Pharah because of the hack.
Oh,
Just get her
yeah,
out
fair
the sky
enough.
and
That's
kill
a
her
fair
when she's on the
point.
ground. That's what we've seen.
You know,
a few
especially on the
times.
high ground, she's close enough to this hitbox with her updated spread that she can do a consistent amount of damage to Pharah, or hack the Mercy so that she falls to earth and is an easy target. That's a fair or not a criticism, but a fair point. Yeah. Tons of piercing AOE in that comp. That has to be a hard counter engage to the high halls axis. Maybe. It seems very specific. Normally you don't want to run specific defenses. Normally you want to run generalist defenses so that you don't just get immediately counterpicked. Right, because attackers get the choice to pick their comp. Defenders have committed to how they're going to defend a point. Gigantti doesn't have any easily diveable targets. They might have been expecting dive and were hoping to beat up anyone who tried it with Ryan's Summer. That's really kind of weird. The explanation is on Reddit. Can you link that to us? The only thing I could see is if they knew the Hurricane were going to run this comp, so maybe they're looking to pick the supports. Yeah, but it's very common in like modern dive to dive itself have no diveable targets. Like I don't think that having no diveable targets. There's a lot of different compositions that do that. Like if you were running like Moira Pharmacy has no diveable targets. You know, there are other more viable compositions that have no diveable targets. You wouldn't have to run specifically this one. Hey, Kale. Cool. Well, let's keep this playing and see how it goes.
Their jam. Straight away, Alex Cuddy straight in the front. You see how quick he is as well on the right? Just get amped up. He's straight in there. He doesn't care. Neil's going to find the first gun to crack it. They're all forced into this small corridor. Already built up an Earth Channel. Where does this guy get his percentage from? He doesn't have a shield key.
He's a rowdy boy, and he went straight into the midst of British
They
Hurricane.
do end up winning.
There with telling only 11.
Let's see again how they actually won this fight.
It's the initial pick from Nil, I think.
It's the first time we're actually seeing this. Triple tank is normally their
So
jam.
the hack comes on to I don't even know who.
Straight
So Happy Cool runs into them, gets a whole bunch of Pierce. And Kib and who is that back there? Bok?
That's Bok.
Oh, so this is the error right here from Hurricanes. So there's 4 people taking damage right here, 3 of which are tanks, and their Moira is not with them. So Moira is, of course, the linchpin in quad tank composition because it has that piercing AoE heals. So with Bok being here, instead of with the team here, the tanks have no sustain at all. At all. So yeah, this is just going to slowly, they're going to take way too much damage that even if Bok does rejoin them, he's not going to be able to out-heal that. So I think that's the main issue here is that Bok was not with the team. So whether it was Bok out of position or the tanks that moved in, something got the team separated very, very early in this fight here.
away, Alex Cuddy straight in the front. You see how quick he is as well on the right? Just get amped up. He's straight in there. He doesn't care. Neil's going to find the first gun to crack it. They're all forced into this small corridor. Already built up an Earth Channel. Where does this guy get his percentage from? He doesn't have a shield key.
Yeah,
He's
so
a
it's kind of weird
rowdy
that Bok
boy,
basically
and he went
just
straight
walks
into the midst of
towards
British
his team
Hurricane.
without being picked up for about 5 seconds. And then suddenly Nil's like, oh, there's a Moira here who is completely isolated and not behind her tanks with stuff down the back of the... sorry, she's still outside and they're all pushing inside towards us. They just jump on her in the backline. She goes down, healing disappears, and the whole dive just falls to tatters.
Well, it's like maybe this time Bok coming up on Coalescence. Like even with him being so far from his team, he still did almost get Coalescence here. Both teams actually have Coalescence. Bok in a bit of a better position this time. The EMP blade did come out.
And Neil's just going to have an absolute field day. Oh, Crusade, he booped him back, but it wasn't enough. Fusion still ends up taking him down. Happy Call is desuited here as well. As soon as he was hacked, no defense made.
Oh, it wasn't EMP. It was just a hack. So we were just spectating the person who got hacked. So they did keep EMP, but they did use Coalescence Blade. And now they'll have EMP for the next fight, which is pretty good.
Matrix, no issues for Team Gigantti cleaning
It's been
him
quite
up.
common to see teams that are running quad tank. They basically just keep on running at the defenders until they get ults online. And then go for a big combo.
It's it's way easier. It's a really really easy composition to run because you basically press W and then you press Q, and at some point the opponent is going to have less Qs or they're going to make a mistake and be out of position for your attack. So yeah, in quad tank, especially with the rate of ultimate generation in quad tank, you usually just keep running it until it works because unless there's some crazy differential in skill, at some point you are going to have an ult combo that trumps theirs.
It must mean that LH Cloudy is really breaking down their comms.
There's the EMP. Anything to combo with it? Not really. Crusade if he didn't get caught by it, but he looks Crusade did get caught by it.
I think RCK has just popped his ult as well, so self-destruct is flying in
the
somewhere
EMP
against the shieldless team.
Davin. That was
Nice.
beautiful.
So it was the
RCK sends that suit
Gets
straight
both
into
tanks.
orbit and picks up a couple for it
And
as
Nil
well.
has
These
swapped
fights
off
are
the Genji
so
and onto
clean
the
and quick.
Junkrat, which is a great swap. A really good swap here because Riptire counters Quad Tank way hard. Well, Junkrat himself and Riptire counter Quad Tank way harder than a Genji does.
Kib, I think, didn't go down. Or if
It's
he did,
interesting
he went
because
first.
we've always,
But look
when
at
we
the
spoke
ults
about
now
quad tanks a
available
lot
for
too,
British
we've always said
Hurricane.
the health
Only one
bars you
use
get
from
from quad
Gigantti.
tank just means so much ult charge for the defending or attacking
Absolutely.
side, depending on
and
who's playing
the
what.
defenders, you need to abuse
Yeah,
the extra ult charge you get from fighting Quad Tank.
but tanks almost don't care because now they've got their ults online, they're just going to try and run in and go for this big push. The only thing missing with the Craggy Zarya ult is the fact that that denies them the big one-off combo they're looking for realistically.
Like this composition makes a lot more sense now that we've got Nil off of the Genji and onto the Junkrat. Like I don't really have that much of a problem against this composition now that we have that swap out here, especially in the context that Hurricanes is running the quad tank composition. However, the Genji Sombra comp with this defense is still confusing to me. I'm just going to be completely honest about that one.
British Hurricane, they're on the backside of a point now, making sure there's a bit more of a commute for Cloudy to come in and lay down that hammer.
Well, there's the coalescence from Hurricane. This hammer hits the floor, but the
Return
hammer
hammer
counter
from
sessions! But the coalescence and sound barrier
And Cloudy did block that. He just dropped his shield too early and it pierced.
soak up a lot of that damage. Kib goes in for a big hook.
Huge
He ends up
whole
opening
hog
up
from
with-
Kib there.
With the whole hog as well, pushing everybody
Riptire
back.
is coming out.
Nil, Riptire.
Is it going to get anyone? Ooh, nice last minute block.
They've still got a tick remaining.
There's
Another
the
big
EMP once again.
Stops Fusions from shielding up, but he's still swinging away. Craggy's almost to that Graviton Surge as well. He's managed to actually de-mech RCK. He needs to just fling it out right now. Kib finds the kill onto the Baby Diva, but Nil is still free-firing in this small, tight corridor. Block one finally killing off Master as well. They're gonna actually reclaim the point here.
I love it that Nil started this fight with a Riptire, and he's already got another one.
Craggy saving
You know,
that.
when we're talking about abusing ultimate charge, holy smokes, the man went to town. It's not really that hard. You just spam into the general area of all of them, but yeah.
Graviton Surge being very patient with it. That took a
And
few
there's
tries,
the initial
but they
cap.
find-
Are they going to go for staggers? Doesn't look like it, or else they already would have been moving if they were going for staggers. So, wow. I don't even remember the last time that I've saw triple tank, let alone quad tank run on Numbani. So, is this common in the European contenders region? Because I haven't seen it in
really.
North America, I haven't seen it in Australia, and I haven't seen it at the
Yeah.
Overwatch League.
So the two maps we get are Holly and Numbani, and on Hollywood it's usually always Junkrat Soldier playing in Cafe. We call it the Juggernaut Soldier or Juggernaut Junkrat in that case.
Yep.
On this map, it tends to be, like you say, more about dive. So Winston Diva pretty much exclusively on attack. I think that Hurricane was the first one to run quad tank offense on the first point, which is why it was really bizarre when I first saw it. And I was like, sorry, what? I mean, the best part is they ended that whole thing without any kind of big combo as well. Like they didn't use
This is what we're talking about with
use
slow
Happy's-
comps, right? With the longer the fight goes on, the fight with more healing, more damage, more sustain is going to win these prolonged fights. Whereas if you have a mirror comp, the long fights favor the team with the higher mechanical skill. Long fights, when you're playing slow versus fast, long fights favor slow. So yeah like. It's kind of. It feels to me like quad tank is easy to counter. This has been proven in so many different times, different regions, different leagues, different tournaments. Quad tank is easy to counter. Absolutely. It feeds ult charge. It has no high ground contest. It has no ability to fight at long range for any significant period of time. It's very easy to counter, but it's also very easy to make mistakes against. Because if you, just end up in the wrong place, they're going to run over you like a fucking freight train with the 4 tanks and the speed boost. And they've got so much healing.
Yeah.
They're going to outvalue in these long, sustained fights. So it's kind of like, I'm running a comp that's easy to counter. Are you stupid enough to not be able to counter it? it's kind of like
it's so bizarre because you speak to like Promise, who was in the chat earlier on. He's like he acknowledges that EU in general just cannot play against quad tank because we see teams try things like we've seen Farah picked up, Junkrat picked up, Sombra Tracer as a duo picked up, and Promise thinks it's Tracer Sombra that is generally the answer, but it has to be executed so well to make it work, and no team has really cracked it yet, which is why we're constantly seeing teams run it on things like Hanamura is a really good example.
Yeah.
Horizon's another one. Quad tank everywhere.
And I think the reason that teams really struggle to play against quad tank because, of course, I've been like I'm coaching Tainted Minds, an Australian contenders team, and like Hanamura is the perfect example where at the highest level we're seeing dive defense, dive attack. We're seeing, Anna Zenyatta defenses. We're seeing like Mercy Widow offenses, and both teams are playing around long range sightlines mostly. But how you play, like, first of all, the Koreans counter quad tank with dive. So you don't even need any sort of like really complicated setup into counter quad tank because dive is one of the best counters against quad tank. But the dive composition, yes, but the play style that you use in dive to beat quad tank is completely different. And if you don't have, if you're a team that doesn't have an analyst or a coach or a player who understands how dive exactly should be used to counter quad tank, then it's going to, it's not immediately apparent, especially when you're playing, what is primarily a faster composition than quad tank. Go away, Windows. When you are playing a faster composition against a slower composition, you want to be very decisive. You want to kind of hard engage. But quad tank, especially if you engage onto a target like Moira, for example, she's going to fade to get away from you. She's going to get amped heal. She's going to drop a healing orb. She's going to get lifesteal. She's going to get bubble. She's going to get defense matrix. There's no diveable target. And this is why I kind of like anytime, this is coming back to that Brendan Geck video where he thought that this like brilliant 200 IQ reveal of this composition was that there was no diveable target. And there doesn't have to be a diveable target. What defines a diveable target is not the characters themselves, but the situations. Is a character out of position? That's a diveable target. Has a character used their escape or their survivability? So a Moira who has already used Fade moves up on the list of diveable targets. How well can a target be peeled for? How much survivability do they have? So, question to you: who is the most diveable target in quad tank?
You would always argue, as you just the Moira with Fade, very much so, less so. Otherwise, the Lucio, I'd probably say.
What about Zarya?
If she hasn't got barrier, if
she does have barrier, right?
Diva.
Well, even if she does have barrier,
yeah.
Vape has a duration. Fortify has a duration. Diva has 200 units of armor, which makes healing more effective, and Reinhardt has a fuck ton of armor, right? But how much health does Zarya have? 400. How much armor does she have? None. Really nice hitbox. And she's got her personal barrier, but that only blocks 200 damage. That's not off of a timer.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize it, but Zarya is a much more diveable target than a lot of people give credit.
That's the second thing I'll take away from today. There we go. All of chat said Zarya, and I was like, these guys should be the contenders casters, not me.
So yeah, I'm not saying that you dive Zarya every time and you wouldn't dive Zarya immediately, but when we're looking at, and this is we're getting real heavy into theory, so hopefully I'm not boring chat, but if we're looking at like a quad tank defense, which would be dumb, but theoretically quad tank defense on something like Horizon Lunar Colony, the way that you would truly dive that is by playing split and setting up crossfires. So, for example, you'll send your 2 tanks and your 2 healers on the right side catwalk of Horizon, and then you'll send like a Sombra Tracer on the left side. You'll play off of the actual like hacked mini health packs, and then you have the tanks who can pressure, but of course the quad tank can't actually kill a Winston and a D.Va. So if Winston and D.Va attack aggressively onto quad tank, they get just royally fucked, right? Their damage is too low, the enemy healing is too high, they don't have an escape, the enemy can just speed boost onto them. But if Winston and D.Va kind of like take space with W, just kind of pressure, building their own ultimates, just forcing them to pay attention to the tanks. The supports are building up their support ultimates, the Zenyatta's just farming with Discord, and all this time, the DPS, the Sombra and the Tracer are in the backline. So you're having 4-man pressure and 2-man pressure on 2 different sides. And the quad tank can't handle it. If they try and push the flankers back off. And the 4 people move forward. If they try and push the 4-man group, the flankers move forward and the 4 guys move back. And the 4 guys can retreat from quad tank because they've got this high ground. So quad tank can't do fucking anything against this kind of like split push, this crossfire, because they lack the mobility and the to actually force an engagement on the attackers. So the attackers can sit here.
Yeah.
The Sombra and Tracer can create chaos. They can put on hacks. They can pressure the Moira. They can pressure the Lucio. You're not looking for a hard engagement. You're looking to set up these crossfires to build your ultimate at a faster rate off of the big, beefy bodies of the quad tank. And then the thing that will trigger it will be somebody using a ability like Fade, like Amp. Amp is a great one to dive a Lucio on because he can't speed or heal. And then Boop is the only thing that gets him away. The Zarya using personal while the healers are distracted, or the Moira has used an orb. These are the kind of situations that you're looking for, and you'll probably get ult economy in the meantime because the quad tank hasn't been able to do fucking anything against you this whole time. You've been setting up this crossfire, being really methodical, and looking for a trigger. So this is one of the things that slow compositions and fast compositions kind of get confused, is that people who play in fast compositions, like Full Dive, think that it's always go, 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 go. That like you go there and then you immediately engage and you pick a target and you go but fast compositions play fast, but what triggers the play or the engagement does not always happen immediately. So
yeah,
you play patient, but once you actually do trigger that dive, then you go fast. So you just look for the opportunity, identify the opportunity. If none exists, you force the opportunity or create it and then capitalize on it.
My biggest question in response to that is, and what we commonly see is a lot of these quad tank comps. Say, for example, you're attacking Hanamura. You push through gate, you speed boost around left behind her, you wait for the speed boost to come back up, and then you move onto the point itself. Quad tank is very, very good at going wherever it wants to go. It will take any ground it wants, because if you stand close to that ball of tanks, you are most likely going to die. They will out-sustain you, they will out-damage you. It's not a happy place to be. You're speaking there about having the group of 4 and the group of 2, for example. There's a Roadhog on one side. If that Roadhog gets a grab onto one of those flankers and kills them, you're too close. The same goes to the other side of the group of 4. How do you manage to play as those kind of dual flanking groups when you have to fight in such a close area, such as the point, without conceding it in the first place?
So the thing is that you don't concede the point, but you do occasionally have to give up ticks. So this is something that a lot of teams don't realize. This happens on Kings Row A very frequently. Like if a team who's defending on Kings Row A has an individual of theirs that gets picked, the call is usually, good teams at least, will retreat out to alley. They'll try and contest for a little bit, but before anything gets real fucking risky, they'll retreat out to alley, because it's way better to give up 1 tick, 2 tick, 99%, rather than try and prevent the opponent from getting any percentage on the point and losing a team fight because of it. So if you are playing against quad tank on defense, so for example, if you were playing, let's just fucking make up a comp. If British Hurricanes is running quad tank attack on Nabani A, and then the defenders are running like fucking Pharmacy, Tracer, Sombra, Winston, Zenyatta, triple DPS, like it's just some real fucking dumb comp, then the quad tank is going to move on to the point. But the quad tank has no ability to kill any of those heroes. Can't kill the Winston, can't kill the Pharah. The Zenyatta is going to be positioned on high ground where the quad tank can't touch it. And then the Tracer and the Sombra are going to be setting up this crossfire. So basically we have, the Sombra over here, the Tracer over there, the Pharah in the sky, the Zenyatta just pew, 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 pew. And then they have a time limit. On attack, you can look for this opportunity for as long as you want. On defense, you need to find the best opportunity possible. So, as a general rule, you want to give them one tick and then hard engage. And then the next fight, you can give them another tick if you have to, and then hard engage and wipe them. And then after that, you're just going to rely on ult economy, or you've just burnt enough time to like win the map based off of that. But yeah, so you're not trying to hold them at 0%. You are using the objective itself. You're giving up ticks. That's just an absolute necessity of playing so patient and so methodical against an attacking composition.
Cool, makes sense. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions?
Nothing massive. No, there's always the question of how long can you give up ticks for before you're forced to make a
absolutely
mistake to contest it.
And it's it's always going to be on the shot caller of your team for what opportunity is good enough and how quickly can your Sombra and your Tracer force out cooldowns from the healers while the tanks are feeding the rest of your team ult charge. So
absolutely,
quad tank, very easy to counter if you know what to do. Let's keep watching.
Finally get there, 3 minutes now to push it through the streets.
Well, Cloudy thought he had British Hurricane's number after so many successful Earth Shatters, but no. Fusions was giving him the old bamboozle, the old switcheroo, and laid down Team Gigantti on the floor. LH Cloudy, he didn't respect the lingering hitbox of the Earth Shatter. He laid down his shield a second too early, and the lingering hitbox hit both himself and the remainder of his team who were looking to come in and take advantage of the people that were laid down on the floor.
Hurricane's huge advantage in ultimates here.
Ripper and Marta had to use their ults at inconsistent times.
They're already going extremely aggressive.
They're just going to pull back so this tire doesn't get anything.
He's sending it sky high.
Oh, did get Crusade though.
Price. Wraith form coming through.
I think with the Reinhardt down on the side of Gigantti though, that Hurricanes doesn't actually have to regroup. I think they can keep getting distance even without Crusade alive.
Well, the Moirash did save her. LH Cloudy going extremely aggressive there. Actually went down first. So look how far back Gigantti are playing now.
Fusions is feeling very low.
Oh, this is a great question. Absolutely great question from Dagiel. So quad tank is good in time bank round. Yes, it's very good. If you only have to take one tick, quad tank that shit. Go to point, force it. In a situation where neither team has ultimates, if you go quad tank and force an engagement where 33% will win, quad tank,
well, but good luck getting your teams and competitors to try and play quad tank, right?
Yeah, right. But yeah, quad tank during like OT or to get 33%, very, very strong because you force the opponent to try and engage on worse opportunities if they even found an opportunity in the first place.
Going to have to get a little bit of healing from Bucket here, but they've got so many ops in their bank, and they've almost got 6 as well. Bucket and Crusade, just a little bit more healing.
Yeah, I think this is a free push through streets. I don't really see anything that Gigantti can do.
The Coalescence, and there it is.
There's the Coalescence. Bucket, like you said, has got his available in a couple of seconds too. Craggy actually fires the grab. It hits the back line. It hits 2 members.
I think actually misses this grab.
Going to go in as well. He's going to
That's
execute
a very...
and Massa, they're dead for the time being. Fusions is going to be...
Yeah, I don't know if it was like planned to grab only a couple and not have Cloudy in that grab, or if the grab was just a miss, but fuck it, it worked. So who really can't, like, it didn't matter what ultimates they used in what order. They were going to get streets for free based off how first point ended. So not a lot to analyze on streets phase there.
I think also you know that even though you burnt 4 ults to get that second point, you've still got over 3 minutes to push on to the last point. So if you need that combo again as a last kind of ditch effort like we saw on the first point, they can farm up for that easily.
Absolutely. Riptire coming in.
Whee!
He's
nice. This is hilarious. 5 HP on that tire.
Poor Craggy. Does Fusion, or does Hurricane just back out and stabilize here? Probably. Fighting this will just put Davin even higher on energy and closer to Graviton. But yeah, I think they just stabilize here.
You know, what the nice thing about what they're doing here, Gigantti, is they're holding that corner we spoke about. So they're not playing far back like Hurricane were. They're willing to push this because they know that Davin isn't around.
Yeah,
because Craggy isn't around.
Like, I'm not sure if we'd go so far as for Massa to like speed boost into the Hurricane, because that's just asking for a counter push. But yeah, I think this is the best play here is the safe one. Interesting question in chat. I know you mentioned positioning a lot, but what makes good positioning in any general tips? If you go into a custom game and try and look for good positioning, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. If you're going to remember anything about positioning, remember that positioning has context. If you are a character that likes the high ground, but your team is not fighting in a location where the high ground is valuable, play with your team instead. Positioning has context, and that context is based on where your team is playing and where the enemy is playing.
That was sad to watch. He was trapped in that small room.
Heartbreaking. Hell in the cell.
Oh boy.
But now, Team Gigantti, they have finally stabilized on the defense. Cloudy feeling very happy to just throw out a fire strike there. The remainder of his team don't have to feel too weary about staying in front of a shield. They've got a lot of health to play with.
Okay, both teams alive. Hurricane did just back out and stabilize. Your predictions for ultimates?
So more on the side of Gigantti with the defensive. So they have, if they really want it, they have that counter grab. Craggy is nowhere near his. Last fight round, obviously Craggy burnt it and only caught 2, whereas Davin will probably be looking for something a bit more close proximity. They've got they don't really have the bait now. I was about to go on the line of saying they have the shatter bait if they want to, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. Both sides have got the shatter, so maybe I think the way the staggers. Okay, let's actually go back and do this logically instead of me trying to just race through all the ults and talking about each one.
Okay.
I think for Gigantti, they've got hold of the sound barrier. That's there if the attempt comes through from Hurricane, but neither side has really got any big kind of big engage tools, bar maybe looking at Davin's grab, but he doesn't want to use that when Fusion's shield is up anyway. So if anything else, I think you see Hurricane go for the big push, do what Quad Tank does best and force ground, use Crusade's speed boost to get in, pop the sound barrier if you need it. Probably still going to hold on to that shatter and hope they can get rid of Cloudy before they go to pop that, though.
Now, here's a question. When Davin sound barriers, when Davin grabs, not sound barriers, when Davin grabs, should Crusade sound barrier? Chat, what do you think?
Probably not, no.
And hold your reasoning why. When Davin gravitons, should Crusade sound barrier? Poll. Chat wants a poll.
Poll.
We're going to bring the poll up.
Oh boy, let's do it. Quite split actually. There's a lot of no's and yeses being mixed in.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I'll kind of sow discord amongst the viewers. Some people are like, why would Jayne even ask this question if it wasn't a trick question? Should Crusade barrier Davin's graviton? Yes. No. There we go. Type 1 in the chat if you'd like to vote yes. Vote 2 in the chat if you'd like to vote no. So now, here's a question for you, Dezachu. We'll see if you know the answer. Does barrier provide ultimate charge to the enemy team?
No, I'm going to say, but that's one thing I don't know, I'll be honest.
Barrier, sound barrier itself, if the barrier is damaged, it acts like normal health. And if the barrier is damaged, it provides ultra charge to the enemy team.
Right. And you're looking straight away at the far right-hand side of the Gigantti lineup in this case.
Yeah. So barrier absolutely does feed ultimate charge. Now I'm interested.
So,
now I've kind of skewed the poll towards no. So, and there is, the reason that I find this question so interesting is because you can argue for or against. I'll just be straight up. There is no clear answer about whether you would want to barrier or whether you would not want to barrier. You know, if the Reinhardt is swinging onto you and if the Junkrat's putting into you, even barriering that probably isn't going to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you do use your barrier, then they still have their own barrier to counter, so it's not going to win a fight. So my reaction here, if I was the Lucio player, and Lucio is the position that I've played the most in tournaments, if I kind of like was ult tracking this successfully, I'd be looking at this and thinking about this and being like, you know what? I think we're going to take the wipe. So what I would do here, if I was the Lucio, and this might not be the right answer, because you could barrier it to try and survive, but I think that the chance of barrier actually keeping your team alive against the absolute ridiculous amount of damage. Davin's right clicks. The Cloudy's swinging into it, plus his fire strike. The damage orb from Reaper, and if Nil actually does manage to get it into an area where he's probably going to be up on that little half circle high ground, spamming bombs and concussion mines into the middle of it. This is a very large amount of damage, and barrier. Even if it survives, even if you stay alive during the grav, are you going to survive the follow up? Is it going to be enough that the barrier itself will turn the tide? So.
I think it's not so much turning the tide, in my opinion. I think if you're going to burn barrier here, the reason you're trying to do that is because you believe with the health bars of the tanks and the barrier on top, you can survive the damage coming out of Gigantti, and then you can force ults out of them. Because looking at these two lineups, I might be wrong and feel free to correct me. I'd argue that Gigantti's lineup probably needs this sound barrier more than Hurricane's does. Hurricane has already got a lot of defensive tools and things to keep them alive. For Gigantti, if they just get dived on and someone gets focused, like Davin, you mentioned about focusing the Zarya earlier, or going on to Nil, if they don't have that sound barrier, it's going to hurt them a lot more than what it would hurt Hurricane.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So going for that trade of ults will be a big thing, and that's probably the consideration that goes through Crusade's mind here.
Trading ultimate's good, but if you even if you don't trade ultimates, right, we're Cloudy already has a hammer. So him getting his ultimate off swinging into grab's not really a big deal here. Where was I going with that? I had a point in my head and I just fucking lost it. God damn it. But either way, you could if so we'll just speak in more generalities here. If I thought that burying a grav gave us a 50-50 chance of winning a team fight, I probably would not use it, so that I didn't, risk feeding more ult charge in case we did lose it, and it would give us +1 ultimate in the next fight. And Hurricane, if we're looking at where the Hurricane actually has to push, if they kind of just eat a loss, off the Graviton themselves, then they can push back in with Barrier a different time. So, either trade 1 for none or 2 for 1, but there's no clear answer here. But, if we got grabbed really early and Nil was in a position where he could bomb into this, it'd be a thing to consider to just take the wipe instead of using the barrier mindlessly. Let's see what happens.
Hooks, so everyone's feeling a little bit more safe as well. Fusions can lay down the Earth Shadow at a moment's notice, but so can Cloudy.
Here we go, grand bait. Oh, LH Cloudy finds one. They're going to get stuck as well. Bait. No worries. Flame strike through all of them. Additional
shatter
damage
bait.
from Ripper.
What did you mean by shatter bait? Did I miss it? I was
we
looking
spoke
at
about
chat.
this on the cast.
Yeah,
we spoke about this on the cast, and basically you've got 2 Ryans staring each other down, right, and you're just piling damage in from either side.
Yeah.
The Ryan at some point from that pressure will have to drop and start swinging himself just to be able to detract the enemy Ryan or deal some damage to help drop that front line, at which time you're waiting for the shatter to come down. And I think on the desk, I said this reminded me a lot of the sort of cranes that you get at carnivals and stuff when you're trying to play the little games to win cuddly toys out of the grabbing machines. Basically, what we were saying is you're looking at the Lucios for the speed boost to help maneuver their own Rhine around the other Rhine, either through them or to the side of them. So you can get a shatter down and hit those behind that shield or off to the side of the shield and try and go for the engagement of getting 1 or 2 targets knocked down.
Absolutely.
Especially the Moira for either side. That's the big one we're looking towards.
And
so I'm curious if you rewind this and go slightly slower. Just look at how that shatter actually gets pulled off. That's what I'm really curious to look at again.
Okay, here we are. Quarter speed.
Love it.
Micro's coming in. Fusion's shielding. Drops the shield. Cloudy's out of LOS, so he can actually
beat
can't.
up that payload.
So there's the hammer.
So is it? Oh, he drops it just at the last second.
What?
And goes
Why
through
did he
almost
drop
everyone.
his... I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless
Okay,
you.
let's watch this again. Just once more. A little bit too far back. Here we go.
There you go.
So did he drop or did he get hammered by it? Because there is... I'm going to teach you...
I think he dropped. by the
No,
looks of it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There's a tech that you may not be aware of. Because I think Cloudy actually pulls off a really impressive hammer tech very well. Or what starts that animation?
It looks like almost he got shattered before the shatter.
Yeah, it
actually
looks like he's getting stunned before the hammer actually landed. And nothing else on Team Gigantti's... Team Gigantti doesn't have stuns. Is this a spectator bug? I think this is a spectator bug. This has got to be a spectator bug. So it definitely looks like Fusions gets put into the stunned animation before Cloudy's hammer animation actually completes. So I think it's a spectator bug, but I'll tell you what the Rhine tech was anyway that I think Cloudy actually pulled off. Yeah, so
his shield's down before the hammer even hits the
yeah,
ground,
but
right?
he's getting stunned here. This is the reason this animation looks like this. So I think it is a spectator bug, unless I'm crazy. Because he gets stunned, blam.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the tech. I'll stop just holding it over you. So, Reinhardt. If a Reinhardt is holding a shield, and the shield is projected in front of Reinhardt's center of mass, right? And if you draw a triangle extending out kind of 45 degrees from Reinhardt's center of mass to his shield, if an opposing Rein actually lands a hammer in this triangle right here, it won't immediately stun the Reinhardt, but at the end of the 450 millisecond timer, it will stun him because of the persistent hitbox. Yeah, it's very weird. So if you, what is usually happening is because Rein has a limited amount of backward, he gets a movement penalty while he's got his shield up, right? So the enemy Rein basically drops his shield and walks forward, or usually with the assistance of Lucio, will get speed boosted, and then he will jump through the opposing Rein's shatter and land it like here, and then it will shatter everyone behind him immediately, but then after 450 milliseconds has passed, this Rein will also get shattered because he's standing onto it. And especially when you're actually pushing onto a Rein offensively, you can actually be pretty forgiving onto it, and you can like land the shatter here, for example, because the Reinhardt is just instinctively going to be backing up, and he will back up onto the lingering hitbox of Hammer Down. So if you look at exactly where Cloudy actually shattered Fusions, you'll see he shattered right on the left side of Fusions, right at this spot right here. And the reason that you want to shatter on this part here, why he shattered exactly on this spot and not this spot, is that not only do you have to land it inside of this triangle, but you have to aim the shatter inside like this, or it won't shatter the Reinhardt. So if he had hammered on Fusion's right, he would have had to angle the shatter to the right, and it wouldn't have hit the backline. So the fact that he's on Fusion's left, he goes for the shield, it was with speed boost, and there's kind of this like weird stun animation. I think this is the hammer tech that came out here. So let's watch that again. Boo, boo, boo. So he fire strikes to break the trap. This is where Zarya or Lucio is supposed to save the Rhine. 100% agree. So you can see, boom. You see how he landed on the left side, angled inward? That's the hammer tech.
Yeah.
That's 100% the hammer tech. So mass, like, and if we watch this one more time, it'll be absolutely confirmed if we see Massa amp. If Massa amps, it's exactly what they did. So the speed hammer. Boo, boo, boo. Where is Massa? Look for Massa. He should be within about, 10 meters of Cloudy or so. Massa's right behind him.
Right next to him.
There's the amp.
And shielded.
And done. Perfect. Yep. Hammer tech.
Nice.
Hammer tech, baby.
No worries. Flame strike through all of them. Additional damage from Ripper as well, setting out that orb. Very, very clean wipe. You can tell the prowess of both these teams. Their ultimate economy usage is just absolutely stellar. Only one ultimate committal there from Gigantti. They've still got the barrier, they've still got the coalescence, and even the grav.
And that may have looked like the prowess of LH Cloudy, but let me assure you that was a duel between Master and Crusade. Master managed to win out the speed boost war. He put LH Cloudy behind the shield of Fusions, and there wasn't time for Crusade to react.
Big Graviton Surge, instant coalescence from both sides.
Do you
LH
notice
Cloudy
Crusade
already
didn't
finds
barrier?
Crusade, and Fusions
Or did he
gonna
get
fall to
pinned? I was looking for it, but I'm not sure at what point in time Crusade got pinned. Was he in the
It
graph?
looks like he got pinned, but he didn't pop it even before he got
Master
pinned.
managed to win out the speed boost war. He
Okay,
puts LH Cloudy behind the shield of fusions.
Because I'm pretty sure Crusade gets caught.
React.
Crusade's in the graph.
Celestial.
Crusade's in the grab,
Yeah.
and they didn't barrier the grab. I'm so glad I paused to talk about that because Crusade did not barrier that grab. Thank you, Crusade. Thank you.
Big Graviton Surge, instant coalescence from both sides. LH Cloudy already finds Crusade, and Fusion's going to fall to Davin. Coalescence still marching on, but Team Gigantti, they're marching stronger. Happy Cool goes for a quick reset. They got 1 minute and 40 seconds left, leg day. They got a couple of ultimates in the bank, but they're going to have to make these stick.
And Davin's got all the charge he could ever want. He's currently sitting at 50 just between fights, and he's got 2 barriers to top it up. There it is, 71% ready for him. Master's going to be the only ult on the board with the exception of Nil with a Riptide. These have been so effective thus far. He can try and hunt down Craig. Yeah, it's already coming out. It's going to come from the top.
Another Riptire. It is high ground. Are they going to be able to find enemy? Craggy this time gets his revenge, finally. I wonder if he melee'd it right at the end. We'll have to wait and see. Craggy still has that Graviton Surge. Fusion moving in. He finds the back line.
slam.
Moves straight past LH Cloudy. Graviton is going to get eaten. Oh no! Craggy. Oh no, he didn't get eaten. He didn't actually throw it out. Craggy.
It was a bait.
He did
It was
manage
a
to get it.
fantastic
The
bait.
ethical bait as well. Does manage to get 2 members in the self-destruct. LH Cloudy.
Okay, coming in, Hurricane's still rolling. Do they have anyone down? No, they're all 6 up. Gigantti is going to be respawning with Hammer. Graviton's not that far away, but they did use Barrier there. They've got Coalescence, so it's not over yet, but with Crusade having the Barrier and Kib having the Riptire, it should definitely be in their favor to close this map out right here, right now. I wouldn't Barrier a Diva Bomb grab either. Yeah. Did Crusade know that the Diva Bomb was going to be what was actually comboed with the Graviton? Probably not. Talk about the Moira ult from last fight. Moira ult is more of like continuous healing at 140, whereas a barrier itself is a set amount of healing that can be bursted through. Coalescence is continuous healing, and it's the same way that the question does not apply to a Transcendence, for example. Like, would you transcend that grav? Yeah, absolutely. If they don't have burst that can just kill a person instantly, then your Transcendence is still worthwhile. The only reason that we were talking specifically about barrier is because it provides a set number, of shield to a target, and then that shield decays and takes damage. Right? So if you're using, an ultimate like Moira that charges really fast, Moira's ultimate also provides offense, and it prevents people from getting close to the Graviton without taking damage to themselves, and it's just more continuous healing. So Moira itself will heal more damage throughout the course of Moira's ultimate than Lucio's barrier will block from a single target. Yeah, Jaws and Leg Day are doing a great job casting this.
Cloudy move forwards, couldn't use the shatter, and the shatter from Fusions was all too well. They haven't even need to get the last point here, Leg Day. They can just move around this corner and it might just be said and done.
You know it's a good bait when it tricks us as well. And now it's Fusions at the start. It's going to be the defensive line for his team, but here comes the storm of Gigantti.
Riptire gets killed by Nil, but Happy Cool's already found RCK.
Sorry, you're still quiet. What were you saying?
No, I was saying getting rid of the Junkrat ult was pretty big.
Yep,
And no follow-up
absolutely.
on that grab was the big one for these guys.
Yeah, and now it's neither team has any ult, so it's just going to be an absolute slugfest. Especially with Kib taking out Nil's tire. That's pretty big. Craggy's going to be the first one to Graviton out of the 2, so if nobody else dies before that, and they just step off. Disregard. Hurricane win. Very interesting matchup here. Very interesting matchup. Oh, cool.
You know what the funny thing is? It's
What?
taken us the best part of about 3.5 hours to get through 2 maps.
Yeah, well, welcome to this stream. This stream has quite the time compression, but it's all good conversation about. Yeah, that was a really strange ult exchange. I'm not sure. It's one of the things where the defenders they weren't defending at the normal point. They had to kind of contest a little bit earlier from where they got held on their attack, so that forced them to. Attack in the best way that they could in the order that they had available to them instead of any sort of like coordinated engagement or that you'd see on like an initial attack of hybrid or anything like that. Yeah. So just about these 2 teams so far. just general thoughts. This is now the second time that you've looked through this matchup between British Hurricane and Team Gigantti. Now, what was your initial impression, and did it change at all, having rewatched Nepal and Nabani?
So it felt like I think when we actually cast it and watched it back, it felt like a very hard outclassing, air quotes, between like Hurricane and Gigantti, more so on outplays from Hurricane. But actually watching it back and going through in a lot more intricate detail, you notice a lot more. It's actually just a ton of mistakes coming out of Gigantti for the best part. Like they had some good fights, and the fights where they didn't make mistakes, they did beat Hurricane, as you would expect. But in the fights where they made small mistakes with random ults or players getting picked off or random diva ults being thrown behind everyone that do next to nothing, like that was what ultimately cost them both maps, it felt like.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Especially when you take a closer look at these maps, you become, I suppose, a little bit more jaded towards how many mistakes actually occur, even when you're looking at Overwatch League. And we are going to be looking at Overwatch League here with Elk in about 30 minutes or so. But yeah, like the amount of mistakes that even the pro teams make is pretty ridiculous. And, you know, we're all kind of armchair quarterbacks here. Hindsight's 2020. We get to watch things in quarter speed, and we can say that Craggy, you know, missed a projected bubble by 1 second, or, you know, so-and-so did this here for this many jelly beans and whatnot. But at the end of the day, these players themselves are acting in real time. They have to keep all of this stuff in their head. We get a perfect picture of the ultimates, and we can talk about theoreticals. But theory is a lot more different, or a lot different than practice. And honestly, when you see how few mistakes they actually do end up making in the wide scheme of things, or when you actually do see extremely accurate ult tracking and shot calling pay off, it really is quite impressive. And I think the best takeaway from reviewing contenders in Overwatch League is how we are actually nowhere close to the perfect game of Overwatch. Nowhere close. So
always room for improvement somewhere.
Ult tracking is fucking hard, man. Like I was the ult tracker when I played. I haven't played on a team in 3 months now. 4 months? Wow, 4 months now. Christ. Ult tracking was my job. I felt like I was pretty good at it, but sometimes you would watch a VOD back and you'd be like, yeah, they've definitely got beat or something, and they're sitting at like 40%. You're like, fuck. But because like your plans are based off of your ult tracking. If your ult tracking is bad, your plans are bad, and you're going to get caught by things that you didn't see coming, and you're going to kind of play around things that the opponent didn't have. So yeah, just and these are sort of things like you always see the DPS players being the ones who like pop off and do these super flashy plays, but the unspoken heroes of like team-based Overwatch are the supports and the tanks, the shot callers and the ult trackers. They're the ones that keep things together and actually kind of lead the team to victory.
Yeah, we speak about that a lot in contenders. Like everyone's heard of Shadow 2K, who recently joined a team, and when he pops up and gets a 5k blade, everyone's like, "Oh my god, Shadow!" But promise equally, I speak to the guy a lot. He turned around and was like, the reason why he gets these 5Ks is we invest every defense matrix, every bubble, every heal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To keep him alive. And that's what makes these DPS players look so great. You just forget that there's a whole team supporting them to do their job in the first place, unless they're a one-man tracer, in which case, understandably, the good tracers are always noticed because they do pop off on their own.
Absolutely. You know, if you've ever played Genji in solo queue and sometimes you just have no tank support, or they have tanks that just sit on your face constantly, like Blade doesn't give you any more survivability, and it's not like whipping out your weeb stick just makes the opponents unable to aim. It's the assistance and the support of the entire rest of your team that actually is going to, you know, enable that Blade to be successful. Anytime you look at clips where, you know, big time streamers or something get a 6k or something, there's always like a pocket or a defense matrix or some sort of setup that allowed them to actually pull that off. Like the Calvin 6k with his High Noon, for example, was all based off Fisher or Gesture, just primaling people and juggling them all into Calvin's line of sight. Like, yeah, Calvin pulled the trigger and got the 6 kills, but if it wasn't for the Primal Rage that juggled them all into the open space, the kills would have been 0. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Shatter 2K joined somebody? Is that what chat's talking about?
Yeah, he joined. Yeah, Young and Beautiful, he joined.
Oh, cool.
They were looking for a DPS replacement, and he was like, yeah, I'll take it. And it was like, okay, a bit of a surprise, but there he is, yeah.
And now we have an epic, just absolutely fuck ton of subscribers to thank. So I'm going to take the time.
No worries.
I'm going to take the time now. I'm just going to send Elk a quick message just to make sure that he is still